Test. Check. Test. Test. Check. Testing. Check. Test. Check.
So good morning, everyone. I think we've got all, in spite and despite of traffic, I think I was just speaking to some friends. So they've started like 6:37 in the morning to reach the venue. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll start with the session. Our chairman, Mr. Purushottam, unfortunately, his flight got delayed from Chennai, so he's on the way again, stuck in the same traffic jam. So as soon as he's here, we'll certainly hear back from him through the context setting. But without getting further delayed, may I please request Dr. Kapil Narula to come on the head table along with Katie. Is Katie here? Yes. Okay. We also have, we have the chairperson from Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority. I think Sanjay sir, he's here. Yes, sir, please come, sir. Yes, sir, please. Please join us. So once again, thank you, everyone. May I now request Dr. Narula to please give a context to these dialogue series.
The message from Mr. Purushottam is reaching here in 3 minutes, he says. Okay, so I think as Shilpa just informed, Mr. Purushottam will be here, any minute. So, so a very warm welcome to all of you. It's really lovely to have you on this, on this wonderful subject that we are having, to discuss today. And I'll just place a little context to where, how this has come up and how we are working on it. So this, as you see, this is a water dialogue series, and we are actually in this series that we plan to undertake. This is the second in the series. The first one that we had was in Chennai, and this was in Sri Perumbudur, to be more specific. Basically, the whole context is that CI Water Institute, in partnership with Frank Water, which is a UK-based organization, in partnership with Frank Water and various other partners, Aquadam, then we have Myrada, Well Labs, and FES. So these organizations have come together to collaborate on a project which basically looks at beyond the boundary. So beyond the boundary, as we all know, we all come from industry. Most of us are coming from industry. We have been working within the fence. We have been working on operational efficiencies. So this particular project, which is beyond the boundary, looks really at the entire approach of watershed, for example. It looks at the natural hydrological as well as hydrogeological boundaries of water. So this is a project which was undertaken by this consortium to come out with sustainable solutions, which basically, are trying to handle the whole situation of water crisis. Water crisis on account of scarcity, water crisis on account of poor quality, different ways of defining crisis, as we all know, stress, the water stress factor that we all speak about, through a very unique approach, which is collective action. See, while we are all important stakeholders, we have our own voices, we know about our own water concerns, we know about the fact that we have to carry out our own operations, and therefore we need our water. But important aspect is that water is a natural resource, as we all know, and it's also a finite resource, which is under heavy stress because of various people, various stakeholders using it from the same place, be it the same aquifer or be it the same water body on the surface. So the overall impact is very high. Now, there is a need for a collective action, because collectively we need to come out and understand not only the crisis factor, not only the issue of crisis or the issue of availability or quality, whatever it is, but also collectively come out and find a solution to how do we manage it in a sustainable manner. So this dialogue series is actually all about triggering a thought process which basically puts these different voices together in a collective manner and then therefore looks forward to having one voice on water. Now, what should that one voice be? And government has to play a very important role as well over there. So friends, this is exactly where this whole idea of having a dialogue series on water emerged. So we look forward to a collective action and we look forward to taking it to different parts of India, not only in India, maybe going forward to different parts of the world in terms of seeing how do we put a framework of collective action together. This is exactly where we are going to spend a lot of our time on. And I think this is what we have also. We have with us on this dais, we have Katie Alcott. She is basically CEO and founder of Frank Water. Then we also have with us Dr. Sanjay Chahande. He is basically the chairperson of Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority. Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority, I don't think we need to give any, we all know this is the first unique authority in India that was perhaps set up for the first time in any part of India to actually look at water regulation. I think this is something that we all feel this should be in every state of India. And I think Maharashtra is a very unique state of having this authority in place, and the authority which actually sets the framework of water allocations. So we are very happy to have you, sir, over here. Correct, we just started. And welcome to the chairman. Welcome, sir. Welcome to you. And no, not at all. So we were actually, Shilpa was just mentioning that, there are many who are joining us and they all started at 6 o'clock in the morning. So they're on their way. They're still on their way. So Mumbai is, we are stuck with traffic jams and all. So this is the kind of, concept we have in mind. And we certainly look forward to working very closely with all of you, working very closely through you with many others in terms of taking this water dialogue series forward. We certainly will like to scale it up, as I was mentioning to you, to different parts of India, even beyond India, and involving different stakeholders. And at some point in time, going forward, we look forward to getting also the people who are decision makers sitting in the government, be it parliamentarians, the ministers, be it the people on the ground, farmer organizations. So that's the intent. That's what we all plan to take it forward. But once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. And with this, I would really like to request the chairman, Mr. Ravichandran Purushottamji, to kindly give the welcome address. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kapil, and my apologies. I got into the plane at 5 a.m., but the plane couldn't take off because of fog, and which is unheard of in Chennai. And was a cloud or was a blanket of fog, but sorry about that. So on behalf of CII, I would like to welcome all of you. Before I get into my welcome and context setting, let me have the privilege and honor of, thanking Ms. Katie Alcott, CEO and founder Frank Water, for your gracious presence for the inaugural session. We also have Mr. Sanjay from the Right Place, Right Authority here today with us. So thank you very much for being here this morning. So I will kind of give you a context, and of course, all the other dignitaries and distinguished speakers who are here. I would like to look at this context setting in three parts. Primarily, why are we all here? What are we going to do about it? And how is our approach to this problem solving? I think I've broken this down into three parts, actually. So it was sometime about 8 months back, I got a call from Mr. Sanjeev Puri, the president of CII, saying that there are some specific issues around Bangalore and few other cities of India where the industry is running short of water. So he was suggesting that we put together a different approach where CII could bring everybody on board and take this forward as a mission, and at least look at water neutrality of certain watersheds that we want to focus by 2030. That was the overarching agenda on which we embarked on this mission on CIA water. I think one of the big assets we have within CII is primarily the CII Center of Excellence. I think Watscan, as many of you might be aware, is a phenomenally very good tool which kind of gives you a lot of data and a lot of insights about what's happening on the water infrastructure across the the different parts of India. So we thought, why don't we co-create this together with partners? And that's how we joined hands with Frank Water and looked at different locations of India. This year we started at Sri Perumbudur, where we have mapped the whole Chennai industrial belt. I think that industrial belt is almost exporting $100 billion of goods out of India. And it's a very important industrial point, which actually is a reflection today because of exports. Something happens to water, it can be international news. It's not a normal and national news anymore, actually. So the impact of water is going to be extremely important in Sri Perumbudur. And so we got together and looked at how do we build a watershed alliance and make sure that the three big stakeholders in any watershed alliance is the industry, the livelihood that is around that place, and agriculture. And how do we co-create something as an input into the public policy, which government can really use that document and really work together with the three important stakeholders in order to make some meaningful impact and scale it up as we progress in that particular watershed. I think this has been the model on how we actually have looked at going about this. What is our next plan? I think after Sri Perumbudur, we have come to Mumbai. And Mumbai is already a very good story. It's a very positive story. I think the government of Maharashtra has done some unique things here. And we also want to embrace those best practices and dovetail them into the approach that we are taking forward in this mission on this alliance that we are creating and co-creating along with our partners. Primarily, there are a few things that will come out of today in our view. What we want to work with further is what is the level of local alliance that we can build on ground, and the industry, the agriculture community, the livelihood, and how do we really do the water mapping? Where is the source coming from? Where the usage is, and predict those for the next 5-10 years? And how do we balance, the discharges, and how do we convert them into useful resources? So I think the holistic data-driven approach is needed in terms of identifying what can be done on the next phase is what we are really looking at from today. The mission continues. We also believe we will have a document which is a public policy document which you can hand over to the government. The third important thing is also we're looking at how we can take some of the problem statements coming out of this and put it onto the startups, and what kind of technology that we can deploy in order to address some of the challenges that come out of these kind of dialogue series. That's the third. The fourth is around incubating also technologies along with universities. I recently was in IIT Guwahati. They're doing a wonderful work around water and water technologies. So we also want to take some of that comes up on the table today and put it out in the university domain so that we can collaborate with universities as well and see how we can get a lot more younger people into this and make sure that we bring the right transformation onto those watersheds that we are talking about. I think lastly, it's also about, this very important nexus between food, water, and energy. I think this is disrupting many urban centers. 51% of the energy that Delhi uses is for pumping, as an example. I don't know what's the percentage, sir might know it very well actually. But, you know, there is a very, very close correlation. Do we fix energy first? India is embarking on energy transition. I would believe that we should go after water transition along with energy transition. Actually, water transition helps to fix you the energy transition, in my view, actually. Maybe I'm looking at I'm not an intellectual glazer here on the topic, but several articles that I have read about California as an example has clearly demonstrated fixing water first helps you fix energy faster. I mean, that's the symbiotic relationship I'm coming to here, actually. And that's also the thought process on which I myself have jumped into this and wanted to make a difference together with our team in the Water Institute. I think these are the 4 or 5 things that we want to get out of today. And I'm really looking forward to a very engaging session this morning. And my sincere apologies for not coming on time, but I hope we can have a wonderful morning session here. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. And you mentioned something, which was very important is the role of the government of Maharashtra. Government of Maharashtra has been very actively engaged on this particular issue. And there is a message from the Chief Minister's office that we would like to read to you. His office wanted to join us for this particular conference, but there is an important meeting that has come up. So the officer on special duty to him, Mrs. Priya Khan, has sent this message, which she has asked us to read on behalf of Government of Maharashtra for this particular dialogue series. So may I request Shilpa to kindly read the message?
Right. So this message is from Ms. Priya Khan, officer on special duty to the Honorable Chief Minister, Maharashtra. Water is a critical resource for Maharashtra, essential for agriculture, industry, and livelihoods. Ensuring its sustainable management has always been a key priority for the government. Over the years, we have taken several proactive steps to enhance water security. I firmly believe that sustainable water management requires collective ownership and action from all stakeholders, government, industry, and communities alike. It is only through shared responsibility that we can build a resilient and a water-secure future. Maharashtra is committed to fostering partnerships that strengthen water stewardship and create lasting impact for future generations. I am aware of the work undertaken by CII, especially CII's tool WattScan on water resource evaluation, which was applied to 6 drought-prone districts of Maharashtra, an initiative taken up in the year 2017. Synergizing with the government of Maharashtra's Jalayukt Shivir Abhiyan project under the leadership of Honorable Chief Minister Shri Devendra Fadnavis. I am happy to learn that the project extended to villages in Aurangabad helped bridge the water demand supply gap in the villages. I am also pleased to see initiatives like the Water Dialogue Series, corporate engagement on water, climate, livelihood nexus, jointly led by CII Water Institute and Frank Water. Such platforms play a very vital role in fostering meaningful discussions and collaborative efforts towards water conservation, climate resilience, and sustainable livelihoods. On behalf of the government of Maharashtra, I wish the dialogue all the very success. And going forward, we are happy to partner with the team in this very important endeavor. So this was the message from the officer on special duty, talking about how the government is also very forthcoming in taking the entire theme of collective action forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to request Katie Alcott, CEO and founder, Frank Water, to give her address.
Thank you, Kapil. Thank you, everybody, for the welcome. Frank Water is a UK-based organisation. We have colleagues here based in India, 2 of which are here today in the room with us, Sachin and Ritu. Frank Water is committed to ensuring sufficient and just water for all. We've been working in water security for 20 years this year, and we firmly believe that really powerful, lasting actions, the ones that will enable us to solve the climate and water crisis come through increased knowledge and understanding of the systems and flows of water, both locally in our own watersheds and globally. For the last 2 years, we've been engaged in modelling a collective action approach within 2 watersheds in southern India. This in itself has been a collective approach where we've worked with numerous partners, many of them here in the room with us today, to create a methodology, which I think will be presented as a case study shortly. Through this process, the concept of the water dialogues emerged. We're really keen to share the methodology, and we believe that you also will probably have really valuable insights into how we can work differently and create change within our watersheds. And we'd like to add those methods and approaches to this. Or maybe you're looking for support to implement a pilot in your own watershed. Or maybe you just want to connect with other organisations and share knowledge and understanding. Together, we can build our collective capacity to ensure sustainable, ecologically appropriate and equitable management of our water resources, especially outside the fence or what we've termed beyond the boundary, impacting all stakeholders in the local watershed. The dialogues will strive to promote and develop practical solutions to achieve that long-term water security for all. By joining us, by being here in the room, you become part of that movement that addresses one of the most critical global challenges of our time, whilst reducing water-related impacts and risks on your own businesses. There's a common quote, there is no business to be done on a dead planet. And this is all too real. We're halfway through what has widely been termed the decisive decade. This is the time for radical collaboration, and businesses have an incredible role to play. But we need to take action, and we need to do it now. To support you in that, the Water Dialogues is an open knowledge network based on collective action. It's driven by principles of collaboration and collective responsibility, and doesn't promote a specific framework or certification or charge for sharing of knowledge. The methods and approaches collectively produced will be open source and available to all stakeholders. We believe that participating or investing in the dialogues is not just a commitment to a cause, but a strategic decision that can drive sustainability, resilience, and growth for your business, whilst creating lasting impacts at the wider watershed level. We aim to convene more water dialogues here in India, maybe closer to the watersheds with other stakeholders involved too, farmers, communities. And we also would like to do them globally. This is a global issue. We need this forum to talk. We need to support each other if we want to really make this work. Water flows in the watersheds, in the water basin, nationally, internationally. It knows no bounds, and a collective approach is absolutely essential. So thank you for being here. Thank you so much for engaging in these water dialogues, and we really hope you'll join us on the journey, and we can have real impact together. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And I think that really reinforced the whole concept, of a collective action. So building, having a collective capacity for a collective action, and certainly it's a shared responsibility. So thank you once again. So with this, what we'll do is we have a very short presentation on the work that has been done. A case study on the work that has been done in Maharashtra. It will be a quick kind of a presentation that will be made on the kind of work that has been done in Maharashtra as as a short example of what the Honorable Chief Minister was referring to. And second, we have a very short presentation on the work that has been done in Sri Perumbudur. So may I request Shilpa to kindly make the presentation, please.
Thank you. So I think the stage is already set. I think I can. So, I mean, the theme is very clear. How do we work together? How do we drive the common agenda, the shared responsibility on water when we are looking at water, climate, energy, livelihood nexus? So the water dialogue, as Dr. Nirmala mentioned, it is actually how do we all understand that water demand is actually going to much outstrip supply completely. Availability, there's a challenge. Scarcity is a concern, and we've been this is something which is objective, which is the Sustainable Development Goal number 6. So just to take you through the work that we have done in Maharashtra and in Aurangabad, and the image that you see is actually our own drone image of the check dam that we have constructed in a small village called Paitan in Paitan Taluk in Aurangabad. So how did we go about it? The WattScan tool is actually a tool which some of you are aware of. What the tool does, it has a lot of information available on a spatial platform. Every pixel has a lot of data. Data on land use, on soils, on topography, on drainage pattern, along with the data on temporal aspects and variables such as rainfall, temperature, humidity, wind speed. And all this together then actually works behind the model to come out with these outcomes. So what you see is the watershed for Aurangabad. The first outcome that you see is the water generation for that watershed, which means all the darker pockets over here are actually those pockets where water will get generated. Whereas the lighter shades of blue are those pockets. This is the first spatial outcome. Are those pockets where relatively there is less of water which is generated, or very simply put, water which is available. Now, water does not stay where it gets generated. So because of the topography, the soils, land use, it will start accumulating itself naturally in certain boundaries, in certain locations. So the second outcome becomes even more important. So if you have a combination. So the whole idea is that if we have to invest X amount of income, X amount of money, then how do we prioritize that income? So for maximum impact. And such decision support systems help in guiding us towards that goal. The third outcome is, evaporation losses. Now, often we find that surface storages are constructed in areas which have very high losses due to evaporation, something which is a natural thing. Now, should we be investing money on surface structures over there is a question. So the combination of these three outcomes, 1, 2, and 3, actually help us in visualizing the watershed, understanding the water challenge, understanding, what is the water story? I mean, am I a part of a water-stressed watershed? Or am I a part of a water surplus watershed is a question that all of us as a part of, being a part of industry and business sustainability heads need to actually talk about. So once we did all this, this was at a district level. So what you're looking on your screen is a district watershed. Then we went further. I mean, everybody said, okay, this is great work at a district level, but show us some scale. I mean, is this just concept or is it something which is doable on the ground? So we adopted 4 villages, which were a part of the village transformation program, also of the Honorable Chief Minister at that point in time. And amongst those villages and drought-prone villages, we picked up 4 villages in Paitan Taluk, in Aurangabad. And what you see now is more focused version. This is the village watershed. So for the villages, we did the complete, we ran the tool again. And this is the WATSCAN outcome, again, telling us the pockets of good water accumulation on the over here. Now, when we are going on the field, it's also important to understand the story of groundwater. And it's over here that we undertook very extensive surveys and what was good to understand is the good water potential pockets actually were coinciding with certain fractured areas. So water has a very typical behavior. It will find itself only in certain pockets and not everywhere. So what you see on the map, which is like the outcome which is on the right, all those green dots are actually where the farmers have located the bore wells. And they are also lying on the fractures or on the lineaments, as they say. So it's something which is a complete correlation. So if you have to do recharge systems, then you need to have some of these ideologies, some of these aspects in mind, and science and tools like this can help you in guiding. So what we did is, based on all of this, we constructed check dams at locations on very good accumulation zones. This is the check dam which is done by us. We did gabions. Along with that, we also did certain recharge shafts with the groundwater department of Maharashtra. So we partnered with them in terms of taking this forward. Having done all of this on the supply side, I mean, what came up was that supply side enough is not going to solve all the problems, because even if you save every drop of water, still the problem of scarcity will not get solved. So what you do is you also start looking at demand side measures. So we looked at sericulture, we looked at greenhouse shade nets, some low investment measures which could help in increasing the remuneration. At the same time, from the water route, you're actually also impacting the lives. So what, in the nutshell, what it shows is that, with the help of tools such as this, a decision support system, you can actually understand where should an appropriate siting of a system or an intervention should take place. And along with that, if you combine with the demand side, you work with the community. And this is a classical case of the government, the industry, and the community collective action. You can actually move from a drought-prone area to a drought-proof area. And just some of the impacts, the villages which were actually dependent a lot on rainfall and completely cotton dependent area, Paitan, which is actually known for Paitani silk, people had lost touch of growing, doing sericulture. So some of those aspects were actually brought back to the villages, and very happy to inform you that there is demonstration effect. And we are told that also we moved out of that geography 2-3 years back. What is told to us is that, other villages are also emulating and learning from each other. Cross-learning is happening and more people are adopting similar practices. So this is just to give you, this is what we have done for Aurangabad. We've applied WATSCAN, as some of you may know, to almost like close to 130 plus locations. The scales can vary from cities to villages to basins. And now coming back to, what we mentioned is Sri Perembadur again, where we looked at this application of the tool for water allocation framework. And I'll request Dr. Narula to take on from this case study. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shilpa. So friends, that was 3 years work that Shilpa just showed you in for Aurangabad, and that, in those last 10 minutes. And actually, what we learned from the ground was the fact that how good application of scientific tools. See, WATSCAN is only one of the scientific tools. So there are a lot of scientific tools that are available. It's very important for us to put science into use. Be it groundwater, be it surface water, be it understanding of the behavior of these natural resources. It's really important. Very unfortunately, we also saw in case of Maharashtra that people and NGOs have put check dams after check dams. After every few meters, there is a check dam on certain rivers, in certain streams. That kills the ecosystem, in fact. You don't need so many check dams, you know, to revive any. You actually are killing the ecosystem and not reviving the ecosystem. So check dams need to be put only at some places where we see that both surface and groundwater systems are in a way coinciding, and therefore one conservation leads to conservation of other, and ultimately the stakeholder benefits. The farmer is a beneficiary. The aquifer is not the beneficiary. Aquifer is only, or surface water body is only a means of making farmer water secure. So, so I think it was a great learning for all of us, and you know, as Shilpa was mentioning, this is a Sri Perumbudur case study. I'll quickly take you through because I know that the chairman of Maharashtra Water Regulatory Authority also has, you know, his other time commitments. But Sri Perumbudur, next slide, please. So, Sri Perumbudur case study was a very unique and a first case study we have done with Frank Water, with the consortium, together with the consortium that I was mentioning to you about, which has Aquadam, Well Labs, you know, FES, Myrada, all a part of this work that has been done on the ground. And all of us, we actually had, done this for this entire watershed of Sri Perumbudur. So the watershed of Sri Perumbudur, it's important to first define what we have learned is superimpose administrative boundary by the natural boundary. It's important to understand the natural boundary of water. Message number one. You may be a village, you may be a city, you may be a town, you may be a block, taluka, district. Understand what is your natural boundary of water which is surrounding your administrative boundary. And look at what are the various administrative boundaries that are running through or within that natural boundary. And that natural boundary is a watershed boundary one. One also needs to understand the aquifer boundaries. Aquifers could be very extensive in nature, could be very small and decentralized in nature, depends from aquifer to aquifer. So therefore, it's really important to have an understanding of this. Once we have a natural boundary defined, then we need to characterize the natural boundary. Characterization is like, we have to tell about what is the land use, what are the different types of land uses, what are different types of soils, what are different types of topography, the slopes, the drainage patterns. So it's important to understand how are these various characterization parameters, how are these distributed in space? Because then water, what we see is a net outcome of an interplay of all these parameters. So all these parameters, all these characteristics come together to define how water is distributed. So this goes into the software that Shilpa was referring to, Watscan. It takes in all these inputs on land use, topography, different industries, different kind of demand centers within our particular watershed, built up areas, so on and so forth. And then it comes out with the same outcomes that were being shown on what is my water availability, my spatial distribution of availability, my spatial distribution of demand. And therefore, balance between availability and demand is my gap. And then we came out with our shortlisting of villages. Once we identified the gap, we came out with where do we need to undertake some social surveys. If we go ahead with a social survey, what are the questions that we need to ask? What is it that we need to know from the farmer and from the people on the ground about the situation on water? So therefore, it helped us in shortlisting these villages against the classification of water gap, where we actually had a good classification in place. Villages that were situated in high water gap areas, villages that were situated in low water gap areas, and villages that were situated in no water gap areas. So we wanted to understand the mindsets and behaviors of different of people in these different classes that we have just spelled out. Then from there, from understanding of both science and social science, the very good mix of both these sciences led us to took us to a third dimension, which is now how do I really define my water allocation? I understand the scarcity, I understand the rising demand, but then there is a situation of distress, there is a situation of a conflict. in a manner that I am conflicting for a same resource. I am actually trying to get my share without understanding the fact that the resource is depleting and it's soon going to vanish. So therefore, what is my framework of water allocation going to look like? Between the consumptive use, and let us also not forget the non-consumptive use of water, which is the environmental use of water. So I should not forget the fact that environmental flows, which I need to maintain to keep the ecosystem alive of any particular water body, I need to also be sensitive to that demand. This came out after doing a lot of this analysis, and I'll cut short a lot of work that was done by the entire team under certainly, and I must mention Dr. Himanshu Kulkarni sitting over here from Aquadam, under whose very able guidance and very able support, we were able to take this work forward. And also Mr. Avinash Mishra, who is with us, from Niti Aayog, former advisor water, who was guiding us through in this entire process. Then we came out with this particular map on and looking at how are my water allocative zones emerging. Very clear 3 zones that you see in front of you. There is one zone which you see, which is towards the eastern side, which is zone number 1. This zone is a complete built-up zone. The entire thing has been converted. It at some point in time, maybe 15 years back, 20 years back, this area was not a complete built-up area, because we see some traces of check dams over there, which means people were looking for irrigation water. But as of now, this area is a complete built-up area. Then you have zone number 3, which is to the on the western side, which is still my untouched zone, which is a little pristine zone, which is mostly looking at agriculture. And then you have zone number 2, which is my mixed zone, a complete transitory zone, which is actually right now going through a process of transformation as we are looking at it, in this particular map. You actually have conflicting demands emerging in this area. The built-up area is going up, industrialization is going up, and as the chairman was mentioning, this watershed and this area, Sri Perumbudur, is exporting $100 million worth of goods outside the country. So it's not about water in Sri Perumbudur. I think it's about water going into global systems through virtual water transports. It's actually about virtual water transport from a water scarce zone to many other places outside India. So this zone number 2, had a complete conflict coming out of it, where you were seeing a lot of transformation happening. So after a lot of thinking, we actually saw that these were the 3 zones which are coming out. And then we were trying to understand that let us look at some signatures. If my zone number 2 is a conflicting zone, a transformatory zone, which is going through a transformation, am I seeing some signatures on the ground? So then we were trying to look for some databases, some data sets. Through social surveys, we also came to know that water quality is a very important parameter which is getting neglected. The health of water bodies, the ponds, the lakes, the surface water systems is actually deteriorating over time. A lot of sewage from villages or runoffs from villages are entering into these water bodies, and they all perhaps are also getting eutrophied. So we saw some signatures which were in relation to quality, which were in relation to groundwater depletion, and we saw most of these signatures emerging in zone number 2, which actually kind of confirmed the fact that for a finite resource, there is a huge competition. So now this was an important takeaway for us. So therefore, there were some, from this particular study, which actually brought us to the Water Dialogue series, there were these 3 takeaways. Partnerships and collective action is really key to water security. Is the key to water. And this is what, Katie, you were mentioning in your address. I think it's a collective responsibility. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us. Then, of course, comes the whole fact of looking at generating more awareness. I think these maps, these tools should not be taken as an end product. WattScan is not an end product. Aquifer boundary is not an end product. It's a beginning to something more. So therefore, it's about community awareness, telling people about the resource. And of course, scientific assessments do have an important role to play. So this is where I think I'll end up, but then this is exactly what led us to this where we are today, to this dialogue series. And these were some important things that we all thought we should share with you. So thank you so much for your patient hearing. And these were the two projects. And with this, I would in fact like to now invite, I would like to invite the chairman of Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority, Dr. Sanjay Chahande, who has really taken out time from his very busy schedule to be with us, and a very unique authority. So we look forward to hearing you and your views on this very important subject of collective action.
Oh, yeah, that's great. This is no. Okay, good morning. Ravi Chandranji, Dr. Kapil, Katie. In fact, at the outset, let me congratulate CII and the partners for having done excellent work. What I could see, one at Python and another as Sri Perambulam. What I could notice is, a very scientific approach. And as you rightly said, that the check dams can't be just built, multiple times at multiple places. It requires an extensive, a sort of what we used to call, and we still call it, the integrated, watershed development approach. In fact, Maharashtra started, all of you must be knowing, Anna Hazare. So that's how the Maharashtra started with the whole water conservation movement. We were young in those days, 91, 92, when we used to work in the field. And government of Maharashtra set up a sort of mission. So yes, a lot of work has been done, but the scientific input, what you are trying to get in, is certainly praiseworthy. And we hope that again the partnership is built over and we get more efficient systems for the water conservation. I'm going to talk on a bit broad way in that sense. That is the water governance and water regulations. Dr. Kapil said that, MWRRA is known, but wherever I go, I find people really don't know what MWRRA is. So generally they are blank faces. So how do I tell them what MWRRA is? So, all of you are aware that in 1995, the then World Bank Vice President Ismail, he made a very interesting statement. And what he said, that many of the wars in 20th century were about oil, but wars of the 21st century will be about water unless we change the way in which we manage it. Now, this is quite a well-known statement. Good that we have not, and we don't want to see any war over water. But there is also another saying which says that there is no shortage of battles over these essential resources. Bitter conflicts over water at substantial level are common. And why I have quoted this is because this is what exactly we are in. So wherever there are small battles, okay, but they are intensely fought in the state of Maharashtra, like what you referred just now about Python. Python has a huge dam, actually, the biggest dam of the state, that is Python Dam, that is on the Godavari. And there is always a dispute between the upstream and the downstreams. And there is a fight between this Nasik, Ahmednagar area and the whole Marathwada belt. So then they fight over water and the scarcity, and then they come to us, and then we try to, regulate and negotiate. And also we are basically a quasi-judicial authority. So we decide, which area to get water, whether we need to release water or not. So it's quite contentious and very sensitive issue, but this is what we are in. So I think let me come to my presentation. So I think for any sector, particularly in our the way in which our systems are in our country, unless it is governed properly, that sector can't see, a proper holistic development in that sense. So, last fortnight I delivered a lecture that was the Independent Association of Power Producers. They had a conference at Belgaum. I couldn't go there, but that was on the VC. And I told them that, in 2003, I used to be there in Mantralaya, and we saw how, this power sector regulators, this 2003 Electricity Act and the establishment of the power sector regulator and the whole regime of the regulators across the state, and in what way the power sector has become more efficient and better in that sense. So maybe there's a lot of learning from that. And, I see that if we have better governance of the water sector, we will have, more efficient use. That is what is required. So what exactly the water is? The water is not a public good. You said so. And there is no non-exclusivity. Means if someone uses it, it has implication on the other individual using water. So it can be termed as a common good, as used by one individual, has implications on the other use. Now it can't and it should not be bought without paying price. This is something very important. So when I look at the water sector, there's a lot of what we call as a free riders problem for the water sector. This is something very important. So another thing is that the whole concept, the way in which I said that I put it on the context of the power sector, the concept of water governance and regulators is yet to be established in our country. And this is what, I feel is important. And not only I feel, with the government of India and all those, because I keep on going to government of India and the different deliberations. So there's a thinking that it is something very important. So why do we require regulators? In fact, better than me, but still, it control over a particular resources. Number one, efficiency is a key. That's very important. It's an efficiency. It's economy is important than equity. Now we have spectrum of that, even though I have just put it like that, just to make a point. Opening of a sector for private player. This is another important thing. That you open up the sector. This is what we have seen. What so many regulators are there in country. Then it offers a level playing field. And another important is the regulators are at arm's length from the government. So when the different stakeholders they come, okay, when the private players they come, what they want is the level playing field. In fact, I as a regulator, like the courts, like high courts and the Supreme Courts, I have state as the party. Okay, we have most of the cases where farmers versus state of Maharashtra, and that is what we regulate and we adjudicate and we give verdict on. So the whole regime of the regulators, is governance regulators, is something very important. Now we have, different organizations like Central Water Commission, Central Groundwater Authority. They also have state regulatory authorities, but the regime is not evolved. Regime is not sort of uniformly established. And more or less like the Water Commission is like in the designing of the projects and all that, but not in the terms of the management of water resources. Thus, Government of India has recently proposed the Integrated Water Resource Management Authority. This is a draft bill what they have proposed, and it is in the circulation. So that is what the Government of India is also thinking, that we should have this. So Maharashtra Water Resource Regulatory Authority, what I have said, that it fills a sort of this governance vacuum at the state level. This is what the significance of Maharashtra Water Resource Regulatory Authority. We are regulator. I have put it like a semblance of power sector regulator. So this is what we are. And this was one of the reform initiatives by the World Bank, because we had World Bank investment. And World Bank investment comes with different tax, as all of you are aware, and we have to take different reform steps. So this was one of the initiatives. Now, what the MWRR brings is the three key dimensions, which I think very important. One is the entitlement. I'll explain all these things in detail. Second is tariff, and third is dispute resolutions of the stakeholders. So these are the three dimensions. So what exactly we do? What are our key functions? We ensure judicious, equitable, and sustainable management of water resources. Now, many times I say that, these three words like judicious, equitable, sustainable, they sound something a very, big words for sake of using words, okay? But it's not so. Whenever I have any case before me, I have to ensure that I judiciously, equitably, allocate these water resources. So we have to always keep this in mind. And this is what our preamble says. So we have to stick to our preamble. And to promote efficient use of water, we fix the reasonable use criteria for the entitlement. So it's not any user, whether you're the industry or drinking water or agriculture, how much amount of water they should get. It's not something a free rider, okay? No one can just get water as much as he wishes or wants. No, this is technically decided by us. Please try to understand. There are two things. Okay, again, first I'll just, and then we'll come to one by one like. So first, it is a reasonable use criteria of entitlement at how much each sector should get. Then whatever it gets, it has to be charged. That's the second thing. Then we have our act talks about the water rights. Okay, it's something a very futuristic and progressive provision in our act. And I must confess right at the beginning that we have not yet been able to operationalize this. But the very fact that the legal provision exists, okay, today or tomorrow, we need to have this regime. We also give clearances for the new water projects. It basically brings in some a proper statutory requirement adhering to that. That's how the projects can be taken. And of course, we are the constitutional authority also. Now, what exactly is the entitlement? Entitlement means the authorization to use the water for the purpose of this act. It means no one can draw water without getting entitlement. Is because there's a water body, there are huge dams, okay? There are huge dams, but unless you are given right to draw water from that. Now, there are three primary sectors. One is irrigation, another is industry, and third is drinking water. So industry, of course, irrigation and this drinking water is all these urban local bodies, all, rural, these gram panchayats and all that, they draw water. So drinking water, industry, and irrigation, that is agriculture. So whosoever is drawing water must get entitlement that they are entitled to use X amount of water only. So for irrigation, we have issued, there's the MWRA, I must emphasize this. We have issued technical manual as to how much per hectare of water based on the water availability at a particular season in a particular dam they should get. It's extremely elaborate exercise. Similarly, the drinking water. Generally, we follow the Central Public Health Environment Organization that how much, LPCD, that is per capita liters, individual, and then the Gram Panchayat and the whether it is Pune Corporation, Nagpur Corporation, or whatever they should get. And industry, based on the different categories of industries, some sort of norm is evolved as to how much water they should get. Now, ideally, each of these bulk water entities must get a particular quota, and also that quota has to be in consonance with the norms. Now, this regime, I always say that is whenever we have act, but that act to be actually implemented, it's a very long drawn process. Okay, it takes years together. So this is what the first thing is, that the entitlement. Second is a water tariff. So we established a water tariff in Maharashtra. The principle that is given to us by the act is that we must get the cost of the irrigation management. It's not the capital cost, but the irrigation management cost. That is what we should. We generally see affordability, quality, accessibility, timeline, and impact on water quality as the 4 parameters. Whenever we distribute this so-called whatever we want a total revenue in these 3 sectors, that is agriculture, industry, and domestic. We generally have extensive public hearing with all stakeholders, including many of the industries. They they are involved. Then we can fix the this tariff in the basin, sub-basin, but generally we are taking a state view. 3 years we revised our tariff order. So we have issued so far 2011, 2018, 2022 the tariff orders, very elaborate tariff orders, and all industries in the state of Maharashtra, they pay to the state based on whatever we have fixed the charges. So this is the second point. Third, there are some statutory provisions, you know, once they are fulfilled, then only the new projects are approved. This water trading, as I say, is a very reformist sort of provision. So we are supposed to establish the regime of trading of water entitlements. Entitlements are deemed to be usufructuary rights which may be transferred, bartered, bought, sold within the market. Extremely sort of broad, but I hope that we see the light of the day. Then the general view was, again, now we had extensive discussion on that at various point of time. Okay, and we get a lot of lot of debate was also generated. So general views that water is to be shared. This is what is the view. It's not something tradable. So we thought maybe we are still working on that we explore the water, the west water area maybe seems to be a low-hanging fruit. We were working and we had deliberations with the World Water Group and other stakeholders, whether we can initiate with that like a carbon credit and all. So this is an area, in fact, I would appeal that if some expertise is there with CII, we can work on this. I am having discussion with various other organizations. So in what way we can build over this. So other key provisions of our act that the fundamental of this is that the water management, that is irrigation management, has to be done by the farmers, not by the engineers. And the World Bank said that World Bank, when it implemented a project and then did outcome evaluation. So whenever the farmers manage the irrigation system through water user association, the efficiency of the water use is much better. That is what they came out the evaluation studies. So this is again an important, and which is a part of our act. We also have the polluters pay principle. Then we also have a mandate to enforce water saving technologies like drip and sprinkler and all that. We have extraordinary powers to equitably distribute water in the basin and subbasin during scarcity. That is what we had issued one order that went to the High Court and then the Supreme Court, and then ultimately, whatever we said, it stood right in the Supreme Court. So, and we have wide-ranging powers to review the proceedings. So way ahead, what I feel that, Government of India has already floated a regime of having a regulator. We have this for last, 10, 15 years, but still it needs to be, matured, taking into consideration all different provisions, because it's a sector which is many stakeholders. So we need to have an overarching regime of water sector regulations has to be established across the state so that, ultimately it is accepted as a sort of norm. There is a normative recognition of the principle of entitlement. This is what I feel is very important. Then another thing is that we must try to work towards the true value of water as a tariff regime. That's another important thing. And water market in whatever way, the experts, I think, I have many water experts with me, but many times I thought that this is a domain of economists rather than the water experts. So if you have some economists, we'll be happy to work. And what I feel is this normalization of the water resource benchmarking. Power sector has seen, how over the last 20 years, these T&D losses and all, they have come down, the efficiency has increased. So water also, like whenever, in this domain, there are different parameters, the way in which you judge the efficiency of irrigation and the efficient use of dam water storage and all. So such benchmarking has to be, in my opinion, the state-wise and the country to be normalized so that it is quantified properly, used more efficiently and charged properly. So this is what, we are contributing towards, and I feel is important for the water sector overall management so that we avert the crisis. Last session, I think there was a question in the parliament. So government also accepted that 2030 we may enter in the water stressed domain. All of you are aware, all these figures are need not treated, but the governance is key if we really want to not lead in that direction. It can't be, like again, I have to repeat, free riders problem. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay Jahande, Chairperson of Maharashtra Water Authority. I think the points that his slides were showing, I think each and every point on his slide actually is can be converted into itself a topic of discussion, topic of study, and I think this is actually, this is something that is so revealing. And this is where also Maharashtra Regulatory Authority is playing a very unique role. I think these whole definitions of coming out with allocations, coming out with entitlements, coming out with the definition of water rights, coming out with the understanding of water tariffs, coming out with the application of these tariffs on the ground, coming out with the whole definition of water trading, so I think each and every element, sir, that you have discussed is such an important element that it's a big subject of research in its own self. And thank you so much. Thank you very much. And I think we look forward to a lot of guidance coming from your authority. I think the country will benefit from it. Country is benefiting from it. And as you mentioned, there is also in the parliament, there are discussions of having a authority at the national level. Certainly, I think it will learn a lot from the work that your authority is doing and is planning to do. So thank you once again, sir, for sharing your thoughts. And these are really some very important elements that going forward we will be touching upon in much more greater details. With this, I think I would really like to invite Dr. Himanshu Kulkarni and also Mr. Avinash Mishra ji for basically having an interaction on this particular subject, on this topic. It will be lovely to hear them out and see how they would like to take this interaction forward. So may I request Dr. Kulkarni and also Mr. Avinash Mishra to kindly, take the interaction and moderate the interaction, please.
So while we are setting the stage and just Preeti, if we can just set the stage, and we also have some very eminent panelists who will join the interaction. So we'll have, brief presentations on what each panelist views about this whole aspect of collective action. So we have Dr. Rao, who's from Tata Power. We also have Mr. Sanjay Gaikwad, who's from Thermax. We have Ms. Lubaina, who is from, WRI. And we have Mr. Umbralkar, who's from Iron Exchange. I'm supposed to be. I'm sorry. So may I please request all the panelists to come up? I think we'll just get this set in like 2 minutes. I think Preeti will need 2 more chairs. No, can't we have 2 more chairs here? Okay, sure. Okay, so it's more of interaction, right? May I request everybody to please I think, yeah, everybody is here. Dr. Rao, yes, yeah. Perfect. So I'll hand over to Dr. Kulkarni and Mr. Mishra, sir, if you can please take the discussion forward.
A very good day to everyone. And without more ado, I think we'll just get on with the panel discussion. We don't want to keep the panelists from you. Also, I believe we are running slightly late on the schedule. So I'm Himanshu Kulkarni. I represent Aquadam. It's an NGO that works on groundwater. But apart from that, I'm also currently teaching at IIT Mumbai and at Shiv Nada University in Noida. I think what we'll do in this panel discussion is we'll go through one round of quick questions from Avinash, Mishra, and myself. And then, with that first round, we'll actually open it up for discussion. We thought we'd sort of not have a second round, but have a longer session of open discussion that Avinash and I will try and moderate to the best of our ability. But I think before I begin, I'd like to welcome the panel. I'm not sort of one for formality, so you've heard their names, you know who they are. And while maybe in the first round, while you respond to the first question, before you do that, if you can quickly introduce yourselves, a short introduction. And I'm actually going to throw my first question as a common question to the four of you. A very short response would be most welcome, which is this concept of beyond the boundary, collaboration, partnerships, and how do you visualize this process in a situation like India? And are there certain specific contexts in which you would like to think about partnerships, collaborations in the water sector? Also considering the fact that we had a wonderful presentation from the MWRRA. Mr. Sahande actually brought us up to speed in terms of what the authority means. So how do partnerships, collaborations on one side and regulation on the other side, do they go together? Do they work together? So there's a lot on the table, but if you can just highlight a few points, each one of you, as we go along, and then I'll hand it over to Avinash for maybe a quick second round. So maybe we can start with you.
So I think
It's on.
yeah. So first of all, I'm very thankful to CIA for this, whatever we have heard and learned so far. I think I was wondering what is left to be discussed and what is that we are going to throw light upon. But fantabulous work. I have been to Sri Perumbadur and the work that was shown for Aurangabad. These are some of the activities which would definitely would contribute to water positivity in a sustainable manner. Now, just to answer your questions, towards the cooperation of academia or cooperation of industries, I think the first point which comes to my mind is we all OEMs. It should start with all the OEMs, not thinking each other as competitors and collaborating, bringing in new ideas. I'm working with Humex for the last 17 years. But I have been asked by another competitor to throw some light on the water positivity, and I accepted it. It starts from breaking the boundaries of competition. We all OEMs should share the ideas and break those boundaries of being competitors, and all that new innovation and strategic thinking should come on the table. The second point that comes to my mind is a very, very practical example of the Almaty Dam. I mean, two states tussling with each other that which one should hold the water and which state should get the water. And I was just monitoring this situation for, a couple of years. In 2 years, it resulted into drought in some part and flooding into some part of India, wherein the management of the dam catchment water or what volume of water should be released into the river was mismanaged, which resulted into drought into some part of state, and the other state was crippling with the floods. But in last to last year, they managed it very nicely. And as a result of it, it was equality that both the states could get a fair share of water, and it prevented the crisis. I mean, these are the points which come to my mind, wherein we should think beyond the barriers of the states, which state produces what amount of agricultural produce. I need this share of water. I think that has been deliberated very nicely. So it boils down to the topography, the geographical assessment of the area, and accordingly going for the sustainable water management. I think these are the points which, 2 points which come to my mind. So.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Nitin Umralkar. I work as a vice president in Ion Exchange, and I am out and out water guy, having experience of 35 years in water only. I have a little different, I will just take you to the different perspective of it. All of us are talking about the water only as a source of, use for the agriculture or your human consumption or for the industries. But I have a different perspective that why can't we look at the sewage as a resource of water? I will give you some of the examples. Sewage is basically, if you treat it well, okay? If you treat it well, it can be used for the drinking purpose. There are some projects going on, and there have been actually, some of you must have traveled to Singapore. You get a water, it's called a new water. New water is nothing but the sewage treated water. In fact, we have also done the project in India, but I think it is there in our minds. We don't want to use our own sewage treated water. So that sewage is basically a very good source, abundantly available. Characteristics are same, and there are people actually who can government and the private companies are having that PPP kind of a models. In fact, I'll give you one of the examples which project of PPP model. It is basically in Gujarat. It is basically that the approach to the government that plenty of sewage is available for the reuse. Why can't you give us the sewage and use it back to the for the processes or nearby industries can use it. So this is going to be I'll tell you that this is going to be a revenue generation model also. If I actually put up a sewage treatment plant and say let us say my requirement is say 50 MLD and I put a plant for 100 MLD. 50 MLD, I will use it for my own purpose. And rest of the 50 MLD, I will sell water to the nearby industries. So these are this kind of, as Mr. Kulkarni has said, what is basically the partnership projects, So these are there are very few projects in India which are actually under these schemes, but that is possible. It is very affordable. And just imagine that rest of the water is available for the human consumption. Why I say that whenever there is a problem of water scarcity, the first entity get affected is basically industries, because the priority is irrigation and domestic consumption. So in my view, the alternate source of water we should look at industrial effluent recycle, sewage recycle, and of course the seawater which is abundant. But seawater is like it's a geographical phenomena. I mean, not everybody can go for it. So I strongly advocate for the PPP models in these segments. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Lubaina Rangwala from the World Resources Institute in India, and I'm an urban planner and come to the sort of water sector completely from the other side through a lot of work that we've been doing on the Mumbai Climate Action Plan. And there are essentially two things that I want to talk about. One is this idea, so while we were also working on the water sector as part of the climate action plan, there was a lot of focus on urban flooding and managing urban flooding in the city. Whereas where we came from, we saw the problem of flooding as being part of a larger understanding of water management in the city, and how that sector needed to be broadened to talk about issues of water equity, talking about water, the circular economy around water, and essentially came down to two conditions of studying the problem, right? There is a clear supply problem in certain neighborhoods in the city where their basic access to clean, sustainable, reliable, affordable forms of water is a huge challenge. And that is a clear supply problem that one needs to address through collaborative and regulatory reforms. And that's one side of the problem. There is also a clear demand problem in other parts of the city, right, where water resource is very, very clean, treated, expensive water is being abused in really, it's extremely gross ways, right? So how do you kind of understand that entire spectrum and then create a collaborative and a policy environment around building in some accountability and equity across this kind of spectrum? So that's, one side of the whole sort of water resource management approach, and really how we kind of framed also some of the actions around water resource management in the MCAP. But the second part of the kind of problem is more around the idea of what becomes a project, because again, some of this was constantly pushed that the climate action plan needed to lead to projects that are noteworthy. And Mumbai is doing a lot of big projects right now, right? And what really then is a sustainable project? And we started looking at, something that we are currently doing. It's an action research project around the Mithi River. And this idea that the Mithi can become a blue river, right? And when you actually go into the history of the river, you realize it's not really a river. It's actually an outflow of when the lake is overflowing, that there is a channel for its outflow and keeping kind of the city. But it is made up of, complex ecosystems, watersheds, mangroves. That actually is that entire channel, right? And so what does it mean to work on the idea of the blue Mithi without really imagining blue water in that landscape? So it might actually be when you actually restore that landscape, it might not really be blue water. It's not, really the waterfront where what we romanticize. But it really turns into maybe 50 to 100 micro projects, which are a lot of what you're saying, right? Sewage treatment, because sewage is really one of the biggest challenges of what really flows in the Mithi today is a lot of sewage. So how do we then think about tapping that and really curbing pollution, allowing that entire ecosystem to thrive again and rewild itself and become maybe accessible landscapes during the dry season when you really don't have that much of an outflow from the lakes. It becomes an accessible landscape. You can go for walks, etc. But in the monsoon, when there is an outflow, that it becomes a stormwater channel. And that's the idea of then the blue, right? That there is a blue, there is an aquifer that exists below this ecosystem, and one does not really need to imagine it through retaining walls and completely concretizing that entire system, because then what happens is that the idea of the blue Mithi then becomes a stormwater drain. And how do you compete with some of these imaginations? And actually, there's this really interesting project that we're doing with Aquadam on trying to think about collaborative forms of collecting data, understanding how do we, build in more volunteerism, work with community members who become then caretakers of some of these smaller kind of catchment interventions. And so I think, Himanshu, it is some of this, right? That that the idea of the regulation then is a panacea, but the regulation actually becomes more a conceptual approach. The how is really collaborative and community based, and in some cases it's collaboration with private buildings and enterprises, commercial entities. Some cases it is with in slum settlements, working with communities, giving whatever resources is needed to make a project happen. But it is a series of micro projects which then bridge this idea of collaboration and regulation.
Thank you. In fact, first let me thank you CII for this opportunity and then sharing my view. I belong to a different sector. Myself is Rao, IN Rao. I am working with the Tata Power. My views on water will be maybe little different from, in fact, it borrows number of ideas from what the speakers till now has spoken and the work scan which has been done. But I wish to bring it to your notice that as the climate change is happening and the climate change is inevitable, which is going to happen, the industry plays a critical role in conservation of water and the proper utilization of water where there are regulations. And Tata Power has taken an initiative of water neutrality. In fact, we have set a target for ourselves by 2030. Before I enter into the water neutrality, the business portfolios of the energy sectors are also dynamically changing. They are dynamically changing in the sense they are looking for more of solar power plants, more of wind power plants, or maybe more of nuclear power plants where the energy security for the country is going to be ensured. By doing so, it plays a critical role. In fact, Government of India has played a very critical role in driving this initiative way back since the water consumption limits have been prescribed for thermal power plants, as all of us know. But in doing so, they have encouraged the recently, they progressively changed the water consumption patterns or the water consumption benchmarks have been put in. Also, they asked us to use the sewage water for cooling. In the sense, the alternative sources of water has been encouraged. No, Government of India has asked for the usage of treated water. Rather, the 100% treated water utilization is made mandate. And also they made the zero liquid discharges as such. Why I'm sharing all these things is because Government of India progressively changing as well as they are looking for it. But not only that, going ahead, the water is going to be critical role. The water conservation measures or the water, I would say the sustainable management of water is going to be more critical for energy sector. And I'm looking at this forum to discuss more on. In fact, I take the benefit of the Nitin as well as the Rangawala. So take the advantage of the usage of sewage water, rather ensuring the water for my business. That will be my priority. And then, in fact, I am ensuring water for my business means I am ensuring the sustenance of the planet as well as the entire ecosystem which works on it. So we have worked on a number of projects. Maybe in the process, I will share with you. We are working with CII. In fact, we did our own studies on water balancing, how much water we can consume, how much water we can save, what are the benchmarks we can arrive at. Maybe we'll be able to share with you. And in fact, incidentally, I wish to share with you one of the interesting study which Tata has carried in one of their projects. That is why it's in Gujarat. It is in Mundra. And we have carried out as you may be recollecting, there is an earthquake in Gujarat somewhere in 2001. There was a river called Kankavati River. Kankavati River went into subsurface. And once it went into subsurface, there was a number of activities have been carried around. In fact, we were party to that. In fact, while I understand the question Sir Kulkarni sir is asking, beyond the fence or beyond the boundary, how we can engage. In fact, we did one of the study. This is the study on the Kankavati River. We associated with various NGOs as well as the IIT Gandhinagar. And in fact, we quantified how much water we can save, both on the demand side and the supply side. We did a study. Maybe it was a old study. We can engage with the CAA as well as the Aqua Dam. In fact, I'm looking at both Frank's Water as well as the Aqua Dam to associate in the on downtime, because I'll be looking for a beyond my fence, how will we be saving the water, how will need to conserve my water. And in fact, I'm looking at ion exchange. Maybe I have more questions. How can I use the sewage water for my solar power plants. I am not interested in the thermal power plants, because thermal power plants we have in Dhanbad and we have in Prayagraj, where the sewage plant have been set up by the government of India. We are using that water for the cooling water purpose. Okay, thank you.
Before I start, because I think quite a good discussion has already taken place. And after this discussion, we came to know that water is the central product which is there in every activity, maybe agriculture, maybe industry, or maybe the domestic. So water is very much needed. It is essential. Now let us see the water in a different perspective. Since we are in Maharashtra, I will talk about Maharashtra. Maharashtra, 45% of the area is a drought-prone area. The industries like the textile industry, pharmaceutical industry, chemical industry, they are definitely struggling for water, which is there. Maharashtra Water Regulatory Authority, it was created, but prior to that, the principles which was laid down by the Maharashtra was the first priority to be given to industries. And because of that, the first priority of the water was here for industry. A lot of industrial development took place. Subsequently, they realized, no, the first priority must definitely be there for food production, and later on, the food production and the agriculture was given that priority. Maharashtra Water Regulatory Authority, of course, I am one of the person who is instrumental in getting created this Water Regulatory Authority, and this is the only Water Regulatory Authority which is imposing the tariff, deciding the allocations and rights, and I believe the entitlements and trades will also be discussed. Initially, the government of India thought that we should start planning from the basin. So the basin concept was there. Then we thought the basin would be too big, like Ganga Basin, which covers around 5 states. Then thought, okay, let us go sub-basin. Sub-basin was also a big number. Then we thought, okay, let us come to the watershed. So I think the watershed would be a unit which is such which will really accommodate to all the 3 stakeholders. Now, if we see the overall the shifting in the economy which is happening today, the services sector which is paying around 60%, and the agriculture sector which is 12% to 13% to the economy, and the same is being there for the Maharashtra, and the industry sector again 13 to 14%. But this industry sector is to grow. The service sector is to grow because the urbanization is happening. So we need to save the water. The saving of water is to be done from the agriculture sector. So there is clearly 3 conflicts which is emerging. And if we say the unit is watershed, then all these 3 conflicts will come down to watershed level. Now, how to plan and in what way is to be planning should be done? Who should be given the first priority? Since everybody is the first user, agriculture is the first user, they will say, okay, dam was built, the water should be supplied to the farmers. The water will not be given to the cities because it will take a lot of lead, maybe around 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer to service the city. And it is in our area and it will be given to them. There would be some industry, there will be cross subsidy, tariff will be there, industry will pay heavily. So the industry also establishes the right. So let us see, the virgin water has got the right to whom? The virgin water must definitely establish the right to the drinking water. Okay, fine. Then who should be given the next water after the drinking water once it has been used? Who should have the right? Whether the industry or the agriculture. So definitely in some watershed, we should go in such a way that every entity which is existing must coexist, thinking the other one also be there. Because we are all in that watershed. Watershed, water is the common pool resource and where all stakeholders should use. Then in what way we should go ahead? With that, thing actually water neutrality concept was developed and designed, which says, okay, fine, I am an industrial user of water. I am drawing water for industry from the ecosystem. I will use it. I will treat it. Maybe the ion exchange could be there. Their use will be considered. That water would be used and again released back and could be used by other industry or could be used by the farmers or could be used for the secondary purposes in the dual pipe system in the urban environment. So the water neutrality concept should be there. I think by the July 23, NITI Aayog developed these guidelines. CII and NITI Aayog both jointly developed the guidelines. And we are working on this particular concept. Of course, Tata Power is one of the agency where we are working very closely. Now, based on that, I will be just raising some questions to all the stakeholders. Whether this concept is okay to your mind, whether it also drives and answers the tariff part, water rights entitlement part, and also the part where the one user could pass on the used water to the other. And we today, who is the single user of water, could be multiple user of water. Too often we hear that in Singapore, there is a new water, they are using the water for drinking purpose and this, that. But since we have got various stakeholders in the same watershed, and that could be there, we can also think in that watershed, whether if the water is surplus, it can be exported. If the water is deficient, can it be imported to that watershed from the adjoining one? So with this, I will request your views on this particular concept. Right, beginning from that, are you aware with the water neutrality concept? And I'll tell you the Siri Paramdur example which was shown. Actually, it fits into that concept. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, sir, for these insights. I think the insights from the co-panelists were really valuable. I think we have discussed about the sewage water recycle. So, Thermax, Ion Exchange, so these OEMs have been working relentlessly on one pursuit of reduce, reuse, and recycle. I mean, this is something which we all of us need to understand because we cannot produce water. It's a finite, it's the most precious. I keep on saying this. I think Kapil ji knows. I said this in Delhi conclave also. Water is the most precious, yet the most neglected resource. And there are reasons behind it. I mean, there are countries and in India and some parts you feel the energy and the money that you need to spend on recycling or treating the water is pretty high than the rate at which you get water. Okay, so people just don't think about it. They feel कि मुझे तो बहुत कम रेट में पानी मिल रहा है. Why the hell I should think about treating it and putting all this? But now we are approaching a very, very dire situation. I think if anybody opens Google and sees the water stress map of India, we have crossed 57%. 57% of India is already into the red and the orange zone. So this means what? This means the industry has to work on, as you rightly said, in a particular watershed, you would be having agriculturists who would be doing probably rainwater harvesting, would be using the well water, okay, or some canals or some scheme from the dams. But it all depends on the rain gods, how, properly it rains, what is the topography. If it doesn't rains well, half of the agriculturists, they feel that it's, a fait accompli and the produce is not there. So to address that, I think rainwater harvesting, we in Thermax, we have been doing it in the factory. I mean, if it can be done in factory at the community level, the farmers can come together and work on such kind of things, which would give them some kind of securitization from the seasonal variations. If it doesn't rains properly, they have left with nothing because all the farmers are not rich. They have got the schemes of, from the dams or they have got access to water from the canals. So this is, I think, one idea which comes to my mind. The second one is about the zero liquid discharge. Recently, there has been a publication from CPCB wherein they have categorized the industries into red, orange, green, blue, and white. And there is a specific categorization of each industry based on aggregate pollution. Now, there's one more point which comes to my mind. I mean, India has came a long way in reducing the air pollution. When we talk about the gaseous pollution norms, we were at 100 mg per nm cube at some point of time, and we suddenly beat the Europeans and came down to 10 milligrams per normal meter cube. This was the gazette notification, and the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, trioxide emissions were thrashed down to 100 ppm from 500 ppm maybe. So if India made the air pollution norms so stringent, still if I see about the the high TDS water which is being discharged, the limits are still, I mean, very easy. People can discharge 2100 ppm TDS water for gardening. The limit starts above that. So I think there is a need to have a strict compliance enforcement. There is a compliance on the paper. None of the industries get the CTO if they don't comply to the ZLD norms. But if you talk about the implementation, I have done my analysis. Only 30% of India has implemented the liquid discharge norms. I think, as sir said, treating the sewage water, making it usable, treating all kinds of polluted forms of water. I mean, industrial effluents, sewage water, desalination is coming in a big way. So we have got, I mean, more than 70% of Earth is seawater. So if we are able to have innovative technologies to treat that water, that will bring a fresh water source, which can be deployed for the industries or perhaps for the agricultural use. So this is, I think, the water trading is a point which makes sense. It is synonymous to the carbon credits. If you do less pollution on the gaseous front, you can trade it off. Right. So I think water credit is synonymous to that. And we have been working, there are technologies which make customers water positive. So I think the pursuit should be not towards water neutrality. We have already examples wherein we have made customers water positive, wherein they have more water than what is needed. So I think collectively with all these ideas, the industry and the government, everybody, I think sir gave a very classic example of PPP models, and there has to be a funding also from government, because for water treatment, what I personally feel is capex becomes a big deterrent and many customers cribble for the finances. So I think maybe some kind of soft fundings on that route. International funding is obviously there. There's a big route coming, but then I think there could be other ways also to do it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Sanjay has said almost everything what I wanted to say, but I will, yeah, I will be brief. Yes, I know the time is short. See, when you say water neutrality, actually we are just saying the water availability as such. But but it is not only a water availability; it's a good quality of water. See, I'll give you the example. In Mumbai, we are so lucky. I mean, I'm from Mumbai, that we get water from 120 kilometers away from Mumbai. BMC has one of the best water treatment plants. And individually, if you ask me, for the domestic consumer, the cost will be 4 rupees, 8 rupees, 10 rupees, and 12 rupees. Okay, that is so economical, and one of the best quality of water we get. So when we say water neutrality, it is one is basically a quality of water, because I have been seeing all the presentations. Unfortunately, we did not address the water quality issues, the groundwater contamination in rural areas. Okay, in urban areas, we are very lucky, I'll say we are very lucky that we get water at whatever cost we want and very good quality of water. But if you see the entire map of India, there are states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, some part of Maharashtra, Punjab, West Bengal. Water is highly contaminated. It is contaminated with iron content, arsenic, nitrates, fluoride removal. So how do we actually issue water is available? I will say water is available. Only thing is that it has to be treated, and good quality of water should reach the consumer, either agriculture, irrigation, or domestic consumption, or for industries. Okay, industry has a choice because they have money. They can recycle the water. Every industry can recycle the water, whether it is a petrochemical, refineries, pharmaceuticals. Every water, every effluent which is produced in their factories can be recycled and reused back to the process. I'm not saying the secondary use. I'm talking about the primary use directly into the process. When you can use the water for drinking purpose from sewage, why can't we use water from the industries for the primary uses. In fact, you can produce a high purity water out of effluent. So my worry is basically quality of water, more than the availability is the quality of water. I will say there is a 4-step, I mean, I'll just take 1 minute. 4-step strategy, what I always promote. One is basically industrial effluent recycle. Another, rainwater harvesting that Sanjay has said. Third is sewage recycle. And fourth is your desalination. Desalination, okay, little costly, but if there is no choice, you have to go for the desalination. So this is a 4-tap strategy will make availability of water will be 120% of the requirement. So water, India will be 20%, at least minimum 20% water surplus country. Thank you.
So I would request Madam Lubina to be very brief, particularly the water neutrality part. Actually, he has made available water more than what we are consuming. But at least the water consumption, what we are doing, at least the same quantum should remain in the ecosystem. So whether the neutrality concept has been seen by you and what is your view?
So where we see the biggest challenge is on governance, because we can put up these larger, and I mean, I think what the proposition you're putting up is very powerful and something that needs to really happen. That we need to collaborate within local areas of different kinds of land uses and different needs that are there, the different sort of demands that are there. How can we effectively reuse recycled water for different uses is really how we sort of need to maybe design like local water management plans of sorts, right? It's the governance of it, because right now the thing is most of the governance is at a city level, and then within sort of individual enterprises, like the MIDCs will manage their own governance separately. MMRDA has some things that are under them. There is then certain responsibilities on private enterprises, like the big land uses like malls and hospitals and hotels, etc., will have their own sort of systems. So we are all kind of disaggregated. The idea of actually sharing across land uses so that you can effectively manage, at a local area level is something we need to really explore. And the local area cannot be a ward, because in Mumbai, even our wards are really big. So how do you really, maybe it's electoral wards, or how do we define those boundaries where that sharing is possible? What are the land uses that people are comfortable? So it's a lot of, also consulting with residents, enterprises, understanding what are the comfortable uses that people are okay with using recycled water. Is it gardening? Is it car washing, etc., flushing, etc., that are uses where then it can be deployed. And then what are some of the uses we anticipate going forward? Maybe 10 years later the crisis is going to become slightly more extreme. We already need to begin to work towards a cultural shift and seeing some of this, right? When you're talking about new water, what is that cultural shift required to accept new water as the form of water access that you're going to get in your shower? Are you okay with it? How difficult is that cultural shift going to be for us in India? Because as you say, in cities like Mumbai, we are so used to having good treated fresh water that for us it's going to be a huge cultural shift. And there will be then, extremely unequal ways in which that new water is going to be deployed. So areas which are the poorer neighborhoods will then become the users of your recycled water, and the buildings will still have jacuzzis and all with fresh water. So so it's a lot of these details of understanding this and really working on the governance around it, which is where I really see where the challenge sits.
So, Dr. Rao, you are already in the process of water neutrality. So can you tell me the beyond the fence part, the water neutrality, if you see within that watershed or beyond the watershed for the supply chain? What's your view about that?
In fact, well, as you said, water neutrality, first thing is I'll comment on these two parts. One, you asked me, rather I would say the discussion you started with that. What is the water neutrality document where the government of India has produced? And then how do you take it? In fact, I take the water neutrality document as an excellent document, point number one. But I have few, I would say the observations, or I would say that neutrality document may include, I don't say that it should include. The water neutrality document, what has been produced, should include probably, because it prescribes the methodology of how water neutrality is arrived, what are the methodologies, what are the calculation procedures. No, it does not direct or rather give an objective way either to the administrator or to the user. So there should be a section in water neutrality document which should address, we should facilitate an administrator. Suppose you are an administrator, to allocate water to a particular industry or particular sector, there should be an objective way which should have been probably defined. I am not saying that this is an open thinking. There should be water neutrality document should have defined objectively how that water allocation should happen. So why this is required? Why this? Because now that is the second question you have asked. And how do you see the beyond fence? In the sense, I am doing a feasibility assessment for my project. So the objective analysis of entitlement or the water which I'm likely to get or the price which I'm supposed to pay for it will determine my feasibility of the project. So I wish in fact the water neutrality document should have come out, should have, in the sense, I don't say that that is the document it should come out. Maybe there should be an administrative procedure which I'm looking at, maybe the Maharashtra government will come or the government of India will come up down the line, because it is an evolving science and evolving mechanism. So I am looking at the water neutrality document has to be deployed. No, it has to be added with an objective mechanism. That's what we speak in the industry. We call it as a zoning. So I wanted a water neutrality document should be able to come out. That is what SCAN does. So we identify an area where the water is available, water-based industry can put up in that area. Our water stress areas have been identified where the intensive farming or the intensive agriculture or the deep irrigation agriculture should be taken up. So this way, I am looking at an objective way. So maybe which we can consider to discuss or deliberate with the industry. The second point, what you have asked is the beyond boundary. Yes, in fact, industry should be made mandatorily the beyond boundary to certain extent. I don't say that because no, it should not so happen. The water neutrality concept has killed the project. No. So it should be balancing activity. There should be some mechanism or some government practice in which the industries which are sitting in the area, or I would say the sector sitting in the area, are equally responsible for bringing down that water balancing activity. So this sort of a governance mechanism I'm looking at. Maybe I'll look forward for a little more discussion on this. Because I'm looking at the industry should do something, the domestic sector should do something, agriculture should do something. Everybody should do their own part, but in a given limit. It should not be like that the industry is doing good, okay, he's a well-off, so he should be given 90% of the total expenses or something like that. It shouldn't happen. That is my feeling. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I think they were really interesting comments, and we are going to continue this discussion. But before that, I thought I'd like to bring Mr. Purushottamam in for a quick summary from the morning and these points. But before you do that, sir, if you'd allow me to make about 4 or 5 points in terms of my own summary from these two. And I'm just going to do it in terms of what each of the panelists have brought forth, and which I consider should also be points of discussion on the topic, but also in terms of how we move ahead in the open discussion. So I'll just read them out. So I think what Sanjay said, and I've given it a word, that usually we use the term transboundary waters only for waters which are shared by 2 different countries. But I think that the concept of transboundariness is now really down to a very atomistic, a very decentralized level, and also at a conceptual level. So I think that's a very, very important point. I think, Nitin, you brought out another point. I think it was there in Mr. Chahande's, no, it wasn't there in Mr. Chahande's presentation. I wrote it down separately, which is acceptability by stakeholders as a challenge for any proposition. And I think you brought it out, especially in terms of the psychological block around sewage or treated sewage or very well treated sewage water. Lubaina, I think you highlighted this idea of understanding the demand supply spectrum. I've also added another term to that, which is availability. And I think when we look at supply and demand, we tend to forget that, I mean, we take it for granted that supply is availability. Supply is not available. Supply is a system that we create from available resources to reach our last mile utility. And I think bringing in the concept of availability, which is what I think the Sri Perumbudur project was also trying to do, would be an interesting dimension. But I think that's something you prompted me to do. Dr. Rao, I fully take your idea, and I think we sort of need to explain it to an audience like this, that Mundra and the Kankavati river basin, it's a very special river system. It's a special river system because it's one of the smallest river systems in India which has a regional aquifer system. A regional aquifer system. It's unlike, say, the Ganga or the Yamuna. It's a rock system, but it's got a regional aquifer. And that's something which was affected by a disaster. So how do disasters affect our thinking of water? Could be one very important element. So I'll just, again, quickly add two more points to this, which is my favorite. How much of groundwater does a discussion like this come? I mean, it's largely around large-scale allocations. But if we actually look at the amount of water used, total water used, and we break it down into how much comes from surface water resources and how much come from groundwater resources, let me give you a few latest facts. Drinking water and sanitation, there's a debate that's raging today after the first cycle of JJM. And many of us on this side of the fence tell the government that we still have a large groundwater usage in rural water supply and sanitation. My guess is around 95%. And then there's a counter argument that we brought it down from 95 to 85%. But it still is 85%. Water in agriculture, 70% of water in agriculture is groundwater. 50% of water in our urban usage, I'm not saying supplies, usage of water in urban India, at least 50% comes from groundwater, formal or informal. Last but not least, we really don't have numbers at a national level in terms of what is this bifurcation into where industry is concerned. And especially in the state of Maharashtra, a lot of my industry friends tell me that we don't use groundwater at all, which may be a fact. But at a larger scale, what is that number? So when we look at these numbers, when we talk of allocations, when we talk of all this, regulations, I think groundwater remains a fairly undiscovered, disclosed aspect. I think we need to come back to some discussions around that. So sorry I took a little longer, but I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Purushottamam for a very quick summary, and then we'll take a round of questions and open it to the House.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. I think very insightful discussions. So one of my, I was looking at this morning when I was coming, I was looking at a lot of new inventions and new technologies are only making it worse for water. Just to give you a perspective, India has about 1.5 gigawatts of data centers. And data center is using almost like 3 to 5 million gallons of water per day, which is equal to something like 50,000 people's consumption per day. So I think circling back to the discussion in the room, I'm just reflecting. I think Lubiana pointed out wonderfully well about the governance. I think the governance on watershed, in my view, has to be institutionalized with some kind of a framework where not only the awareness increases, but also the deployability of the agreements become easy to navigate. One of the big challenges even in Sri Perumbudur is, I think Mr. Mishra forgot to mention, in the green beautiful area that we saw, a new airport is being built. And the new airport, we don't know what that will be making it green now, or red or orange, we don't know that actually. And the airport is getting built much faster than probably we're going to make the other two parts greener, you know. So that's the race against time we are coming up with actually. So I think for me, you know, we spoke a lot about water neutrality, water entitlement, watershed planning, but I think can we get some best practices around governance, and could we build something around governance on how the three different parts of the watershed, industry, agriculture, and livelihood, really balances this, and one feeds into the other and one thrives out of the other actually. So I think if we can really create some kind of models around that space, I'm not going to groundwater, Mr. Kulkarni, and to my assessment, it's more than 80% of India's water is coming from groundwater actually. That's our assessment in our own analysis. So I think governance is one big takeaway for me. I think the second takeaway is, you know, it's a lot around data. I think we need to get data out into the public domain so that the data actually helps us to make the right amount of, you know, decision making. So data is a very big part in this entire assessment and all of that we do actually. And the last is collaboration, you know. How do you increase the propensity of collaboration, you know, across multiple stakeholders, driven together with a lot of innovation, you know. I mean, there's a talk about ZLD. I think most of the industries are really using ZLD, but still, as you mentioned, it's only 30%. So how do we actually drive it to 100%, and how do we make that more, you know, understandable? I don't know what is needed there, but it could be, we need to disrupt technology, because cost of, one of the challenges I see for MSME is that the cost of the ZLD is prohibitively expensive for the size and the scale of operation he has. So we might need to look at different technologies, different ways of going about ZLD. A lot of innovative new startups needed to execute them fast as well. So I think this whole ecosystem of technology and startup ecosystem, I think one of the learnings I have in this space is money is never a problem. I think it's all about execution capacity. And I think one of the learning in water for me is about what is our ability to execute a CapEx, you know, in terms of water infrastructure, and the speed at which we can execute capacity. I think this is an area of capacity building, which is also a very important topic, which is less spoken. And I think it's very important because, you know, we talk always about the budgets and the CapEx, but I think India has a problem on capacity, execute things actually. And when you look at the way China is executing on infrastructure, the speed at which they're executing on infrastructure, I think the capacity to do things is not with us right now actually. So these are some observations, and which I thought I will just sum it up actually. But this is not all the end of it, but these are my quick observations. So thank you. Thank you.
So, hello, is it working?
Yes.
Yeah. So, we'll open it up for discussion, and what we'll do is, if the audience would like to pose questions, if you can have very pointed questions, you can take the more detailed ones later outside. We'll take three cycles of 3 questions. So there you go, sir. One hand. I'll come to you. Are there any more questions in the first round? 1, 2, 3. Okay, there you go. We'll begin with you.
Very good afternoon. This is R.S.N. Sharma from Water for People. Sir, you spoke about the water governance. I would like to get an understanding more about that, because in rural governance, we have village water and sanitation committees. And in urban governance, we have ward committees, which are playing equally role. And Avinash Mishra ji, I work with him, I associated with him in Niti Aayog. So in terms of understanding the verticality and horizontality of the water governance, maybe we need to come out with a kind of a conceptualization to take it forward, because in our experience after 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, the village water and sanitation committees or the ward committees at the urban and rural governance are not so successful. Maybe in some states there are well functioning, but in taking forward the next alternate approach, maybe in ensuring water governance in both rural as well as in the urban scenarios, what would be the verticality as well as the horizontality that needs to be discussed? Maybe a policy level advocacy needs to be done at that level, at the India level, because still we are talking about making sure that water should be available, water affordability should be ensured. Comparing the neutrality or the affordability or the availability issues, I think water governance is a key element that needs to be focused in the longer run. So drawing us to 2030 strategy, how we can ensure that this horizontality and this verticality can be ensured. Thank you.
So this is on.
There is a secondary resource of recycling sewage or something, or I mean, industrial water, whatever it is. But we need to focus on the primary resource, and that is rain is the only resource which we can catch and we can store and which we can apply for our different purposes. And with time, according to my study, whatever little bit I study, 96% of the groundwater is being used for all kind of purposes. And the need of water is day by day is increasing, whether it is for population, for industrial growth, or for agricultural growth. So water is a primary thing for life. And secondary thing for life also through indirectly we consume water through food. So ये हमारी life के लिए direct water and food is compulsory. Industrial चीज उसके बाद आती है, पहले तो हमारी लाइफ है. तो मेरे ख्याल से हमको ग्राउंड वाटर पे बहुत स्ट्रेस करना चाहिए, एंड एनजीओज लाइक अस would like to collaborate with different agency, whether it is private entity or government. We have different groundwater elevation solutions. We are having very good experts from IIT geohydrologist and ex-groundwater authority commissioner. So we develop the custom-made solutions on groundwater. And apart, we have tailored few solutions for the best solutions for farmlands where we implement. Sorry. So we have developed good techniques for farmland to have water throughout the year. So which can be implemented and ensure the food security.
Yeah, so we'll take that comment and we'll see how the panel responds. Thank you, ma'am. There was a third question there. Yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Prasanna. I represent the Aquatic International, US-based company. They are into the water recycle, reuse, and synergy. Specifically, I think at the started the session, CI just presented the 2 case studies. And their approach on the very data science and methodological approach to identify the resources. And it's very impressive and the very structured way to get into that. So basically, nowadays everybody is talking about the artificial intelligence and AI and then machine learning kind of things. And it is a buzz of the things, talk of the town. So basically, specific, or maybe I'm thinking how we can use this AI integrate for this data science or to identify those resources. So, and how can we do this holistic approach to make it happen? That is the things from my end.
Okay, so we'll take a round of responses. You can pick any one of those 3 topics, 3 or 4 topics.
See,
Or-
madam,
yeah.
I
Sunil, you
agree
can
with
start.
you that we should concentrate on the primary source of water, but now the requirement is so huge. It's gone beyond the primary requirements. See, I understand that the primary water, I mean, which is the groundwater, is contaminated with arsenic, iron content, nitrate content, or your, fluoride content, and there are a lot of associated diseases with this. So all the industries actually, those who are into the water treatment, they have the solutions for this. Like, you have either you go for the membrane technologies, or you go for the resin based technologies, or there are medias which is developed by the industries, water treatment industry, which can address the groundwater contamination. So that I think that, as I said earlier, that it's gone beyond the primary requirement, because the requirement is so huge, the deficit is so huge. So you have to actually look for the secondary requirement. But whenever there is a deficit, see, the first preference will be given to the domestic consumption and the irrigation. So what industry will do? So that is the reason why we have gone into the secondary requirements.
Yes.
Okay, because all the three questions are somewhat
I'm
related.
proposing about the
Hold on,
rainwater recharge.
We'll just come back to that,
Yeah.
man. We'll just come.
I'll take the questions, all the three questions in one go.
Yes.
In fact, the importance of groundwater is immense. The groundwater has to be saved, and the rainwater harvesting goes without saying. In fact, the government of India has made number of rules and regulations, and it's a part and parts of the all building activities, all the project activities. So rainwater harvesting is being taken, and the groundwater is also being groundwater recharging, or the groundwater containment uses regulations are also have been built into the system. But I would take the third question a little more seriously, because that is what is the AI into the data analysis of the part. In fact, this is a building up in the country. The number of startups have been already come up, as you may be knowing that. The number of startups have already collecting the data, analyzing the data, advising the industries how much water they should use, what are the sources where in which they can tap. This is the exercises which is being done by a number of startups. It's a small softwares which they develop. In fact, one of the project which I mentioned into the Kankavati River, which is happened in Mundra. In fact, there the capacity building is very essential. We have a Bhujal monitoring. That is what is groundwater monitoring, the levels monitoring. And which was done manually. In fact, it is converted to a data source. Piezometers were installed. The level of water has been collected. It has been converted into the water savings. The quantifications it happened. It is as you know. But I take this point. This is the right time. The government of India should build up a data banks or other data analysis which should be easily available, and which will build into that water neutrality as in a larger sense. So I invite, in fact, I thank that. In fact, maybe I'll be happy to join with somebody to work on this AI integration into the data analysis. Okay, thank you.
So just building on the idea of, the watershed management framework that sir, you were talking about, I think a lot of the governance related sort of challenges can be, one designed for in a consolidated framework that has multiple sort of levels, right? From the sparsely distributed communities that are sharing similar resources of water to then coming down to the scale of localities. I think where the challenge is really in again, as you were talking about the idea of the fact that we don't have capacities, and really that's where, in terms of whether we have the right sort of technical solutions in the market to really be able to integrate some of these effective systems of rainwater harvesting, recharge, etc. Like one example, from the Mumbai Climate Action Plan, where we were talking about also disaggregated responsibilities with private property owners to manage their stormwater themselves. A concept that we are constantly pushing for in the waste management sector, that manage your own waste on plot. We were trying to sort of operationalize that on stormwater is, can you do whatever solutions you have accessible, affordable to manage your own water that is falling within your plot. Either you do rain gardens and recharge pits and whatever to kind of replenish the groundwater, or you catch it through rainwater harvesting systems and you store it and reuse it for other uses. But whatever is within your plot doesn't then enter the city's drainage system, which then in turn will actually reduce the load on the city's drainage system, and therefore, incidents of waterlogging and flooding that are disrupting then, mobility, etc. in the city automatically reduces. So when we understand our own kind of role that we can play in some of these very connected problems, to me, the question of governance actually comes down to also the individual and the society, really. And how do we create then a framework that really is able to span these like almost is cross-sectional, and with what you were proposing, that you can then have access to be able to deploy different policy and regulatory systems, and those don't then become barriers. So the regulatory environment needs to become much more enabling of these collaborations to happen, to be able to effectively manage. And then what is really the incentive that that societies have to effectively put in rainwater harvesting, recharge pits, etc. How are we somehow being able to build in a system of incentives, because the crisis is not an incentive enough at all right now, right? We have not taken the crisis seriously at all. So that's not really working. And the crisis solutions that emerge from the narrative of crisis will only be stopgap solutions, and not really looking at, long-term kind of cultural shift. So I think really thinking through some of this, and the process of designing then this framework needs to be highly consultative with diverse, income groups, use groups, land uses, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, I think just to add on this, ma'am, your question about this rainwater harvesting, I think as sir has already said, all the societies are adopting it, even the industries. I see a well in our own factory premises wherein they store the rainwater, and even the effluent treatment plant, and with all that, even this effluent is being treated and recycled. But I believe there is a missing link here. We are talking about the rainwater harvesting, preventing the groundwater depleting from depleting by recharging it. But at the same time, we have to remember that we have to work towards avoiding it from getting polluted. When I visited Ichalkaranji, wherein you have 250 small sizing units, in that conference, one of the customer told me that when we take the underground water, जब pump करके लेते हैं तो उसमें petrol का smell आता है. I mean, this was something which shattered me, and it was eye opener. And when I visited those sizing units, you have got small 2 KLD ETPs. They just treat some water, do some jugaad, and then throw the water on the ground. And they say we are doing gardening. Nobody measures the TDS of those water. So while we talk, all of us talk about good governance, compliance, we also have to see what is there on ground zero. If you really ask me, the compliances have to go very, very ruthlessly strict. They will have to, impose heavy penalties, which I see is happening now. CPCB, MPCB, with all of their differences, are coming together and trying to impose very, very strict penalties on people who are not, following the compliance. So just to answer your question, it's equally important to do all of that, but also to prevent water from getting polluted. And about AI, I think a lot of work is already going on in India. If you talk about wastewater treatment, there are systems which will give you real-time feedbacks about which process has to be tweaked so that you improvise on your complete process to reduce your chemical consumptions. Because all said and done, when we treat water, we generate sludge. I think all of us have to agree on that. When we treat something, we generate something. So that something has to be also disposed of safely. Otherwise, it's like converting one source of pollution into another. That's what is, my feeling.
Okay, we'll come back to you. So there's one hand here. Let me see if there are 2 more there. We'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Firstly, I want to appreciate the panelists. The insights that you have brought up during the discussions, many of them are known, but you have shed a different light on it. So I'm carrying those as takeaways for myself. I'm Swapnil from ERA Water. We work in water conservation, a lot on groundwater. We work with residential communities and industries. One pattern that we have observed is, be it an industry or a residential community, even I myself, we feel entitled to fresh water, be it tap water or groundwater. If we strike groundwater, yes, that is mine. But when we use the water and when we let it out, this is where we turn our backs. That is government's job or that is somebody else's job. So we also try to sensitize the users, just like everyone is a user of money. Likewise, water is synonymous. Everyone is user of water. But it is very difficult to break that mindset that we are also entitled to the water that we have let out, be it sewage or effluent, whatever it is. It is difficult to convince people of taking ownership of that and take responsibility of that. Even if that mindset changes, a lot of it is changed. If one person treats 5 liters of effluent daily, I'm sure we will be water surplus, but it is a mindset that is very difficult to break. So something from your experience would help us.
Hello. So it was indeed a great insightful discussion regarding water scarcity, how we address the water issues. So I'm Aditi Thorat from Wipro Water. So one major issue I think which we have discussed but needs to be highlighted is regarding water wastage. As sir mentioned, we are a bit privileged. We are living in Mumbai city. We are getting water from around 120-kilometer pipeline. But what if the water which is transferred through pipeline is wasted due to some leakages? As we see the statistics, around 25 to 40% water is being wasted because of leakages in pipeline. And around, I think, within 1 month or 2 months, we usually get the news that there is a leak in pipeline because of which there is water scarcity issues. So how can we address this issue of water wastage? That is my question. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I'm Deepa and I'm representing Gurujal here. And my question, I think, picking up from what ma'am said, is that, we've been talking about how a large gap between demand and supply calls for a collective responsibility and better governance. I think I'm very intrigued to understand how can we democratize beyond infrastructure, more technology, beyond creating rainwater harvesting structures, stormwater treatment, at an individual level. How can we democratize even technology like the scientific tools that were shared during the case study to make more informed decisions, right? How do we go beyond sensitization and awareness, say at a farmer level or a poor neighborhood, right? So I really wanted to understand and get your thoughts on that.
We can do a quick round of responses to those three.
Yeah, I think I would take that first question from the Wipro team. I mean, this water wastage, what you were talking about, I think there's a lot of work which is already going around. The pipeline network which has been laid down, there's a lot of sensitization or the instrumentation which is being deployed, which will, and there are softwares and there are technologies which give you clear, it's like an X-ray, which will give you a source of the leak, and that can be retrofitted within no time. I think gone are the days when people used to excavate to see where is the leakage, kahan pe leakage hai. Now we are not in that era. So I think there's a lot of technology-based intervention already happening, and it starts from an individual. You as an individual have to think that you have to reduce, reuse, and recycle. We can all talk about water conservation, but if when we use water, if we use it like it's an abundant resource, I mean, then there's no solution to this problem. It all starts from, an individual and it ends to an individual. That's what is my feeling.
And another challenge is basically our water systems. Since you stay in Bombay, water system, I mean, the pipelines are very old. It's of the British era. Okay. And you see the challenges. See, if you want to change the entire network of the Mumbai region, it is impossible. You see how the metro work is going on, because it is in the city is working. It's not like city is actually is not working. It is a standstill. See, if you have actually a greenfield kind of a thing, it is easy. But a brownfield, I always call it a brownfield. It's very, very difficult. And these pipelines, definitely, as Sanjay has said, a lot of work is going on, and a lot of AI is also applied to it. A lot of technologies are also available. So instead of, saying that this is not happening, that is not happening, I think we should see that, what is the challenges before the municipal corporation. Yes. Yes.
And it will gradually happen.
In fact, many of you may not be aware, there are at least 10,000 plus wells in Mumbai, 10,000 plus wells, which is defunct. And Mumbai Municipal Corporation is trying to actually revive those wells. If that wells are revived, I think the deficit would definitely come down. See, today we get water around 3,600 MLD in Mumbai. The requirement is 4,200. So municipal corporation is trying to bridge this gap by recharging the wells. And what you said is basically, it is only one line I can say. Everybody thinks that water is a free commodity, and that is the reason why we waste water. That is the only thing is that it is here. Yeah.
So just few ideas that come to mind. One is, I mean, there are forms of empaneling good technologies that that the government can, you know, certify as these are sort of reliable vendors that you can go. So that could be, you know, one way. But honestly, I think at this point, even really elevating the need for any more and more solutions, like through expos or melas that can be, you know, hosted. So I think elevating the need for solutions and technology fixes in the water resilience space is important for across all kinds of, you know, solutions that that different kind of land uses can begin to source from the market. And the solutions then would also sort of lend to this whole sort of need for AI fixes, right? And in monitoring also the ways in which one uses water, and how can you kind of prescribe then certain uses towards, you know, recycled water, and manage that within the building itself, and constantly keep collecting data, because I think the accountability is also equally kind of the challenge. So these are things that come to mind, because we have, you know, things like the Maji Vasundhara Abhiyan, which also talks about Jal, which is an important kind of pillar for them. And they're talking about it across different scales, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. So how do you then, you know, maybe use the concept of melas to do these kinds of tech expos in different kinds of, you know, settlements broadly, to bring in much more technology and democratize the problem.
Yeah, in fact, already panelists have already answered all the queries, but I would only submit what the industry does. In fact, industry has a very scrupulously monitor the water consumption. In fact, it is already made mandatory in number of industries, but maybe in all the places it can be made mandatory. We have a water consumption analysis, and we know the area where it is more, where the leakages are there, where the water conservation measures to be taken more, or the benchmarks are there, which is already being done. In fact, I take the point, but that is where the conservation measures or the reduction or all the things have started. Water has been considered as a free commodity, which is easily available. Rather, nowadays the prohibitive expenses are being imposed. Prohibitive penalties are being imposed for spending more water, or using more water, or throwing the untreated water. So that will probably take care of the rest of things. As ma'am has said already, all the governance practices which are being deployed in the industry as well. Okay, thank you.
So before I actually go to the next round, I'd like to very quickly bring in maybe Katie and Kapil on a couple of points. I mean, very quick reflections on a couple of points, the interesting discussions that we've been having. And, you know, Kapil, I want to begin with you in terms of this concept of watersheds, right? And the Sri Perumbudur, or even the Maharashtra case. And I was just reflecting that the potential for using the concept of watershed-based assessment in India, in areas in India, is 70%. Because if you remove the alluvial plains of the Indus and the Ganges and the Brahmaputra, you're left with 70% area, which has the potential to go through a watershed assessment sort of approach for these collaborations and partnerships. And using that approach, and based on a lot of the reflections that have come through, could you sort of highlight 3 or 4 or 5 points where this concept could be scaled up to a certain level? Okay. So that's a question for you. And for Katie, if you can also quickly reflect about this project, this example, which is beyond the boundary project and a sort of a water stewardship idea. What is the potential for the idea of such partnerships and collaborations to be replicated? And what will it take to do so? When you look at the discussions, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but just based on what you've heard over the last 2 days and you've been part of this entire process, what are the thoughts you have? And then we'll come back to a few more questions, if you can just patiently wait for these two.
Thank you, Himanshu. Can you second sit in?
Please, please.
So, and I think your question itself is an answer in itself, which one couldn't agree more to. Basically, as you rightly said, in 70% of India, is basically belongs to that kind of a regime which requires a watershed approach. Now, why? See, when we do from this discussion, when we look at nuances of climate change, when we look at nuances of land use changes that are happening, when we look at demand versus the resource, certainly I see that this watershed approach is an approach which basically once superimposed on any I would say administrative boundary, it actually helps us in understanding the distribution and aware of this resource which we are wanting to conserve, which we are wanting to not only conserve, but we are wanting to manage it well. Now, that quantification of this resource for managing it well actually can come out through watershed approach only. But I must also compliment Maharashtra for one thing. When I see in Water Institute, when we do a lot of these WattScan applications across states, I find Maharashtra wonderfully and so unique that the boundaries of districts and the boundaries of state superimpose and coincide with the natural boundaries of watersheds over here. I do not see any state in the country which has designed its administrative boundaries based on natural boundaries. Maharashtra is the only state where I see that administrative boundaries have been designed based on natural boundaries. This is, Himanshu, the concept that perhaps I wish the entire India could have followed. And today, when we talk about these conflicts, which our wonderful panelists were mentioning about, is actually because we have not somehow carried our administrative boundaries in relationship with the natural boundaries. Why today all these issues otherwise would have come up? But so I think yes, I think there is a lot of merit today. In basically moving on superpositioning the two things together, impositioning two things together, and there is a lot of success, and we have really seen that and good examples, Himanshu, that you are also aware of water budgeting. When we budget water, keeping these sensitivities in mind, even for administrative boundaries, they work very well. We understand the gaps, and we also then understand how do we fill those gaps. And I think some of the points that all the panelists have really mentioned, so looking at source diversification, recycling sewage, reusing, rainwater harvesting, the blue mythic thing that you were mentioning about, that's something which is so romantic in it, that I want my water and water bodies to be so blue. But then to make them blue, I need watershed approaches in mind. I need to understand what is coming, what is incoming, what is outflowing. How do I put that, thing in place? So I hope I have answered.
I'll take this to Katie now, and let's wait for her reflections, and then we'll come back to.
Thank you. Yeah, quite. It's just been so fascinating. I think there is so much to learn from just these people in the room. I think allocations, just thinking back to BTB and what we've learned, the allocations of the water within the watershed really needs to be considered and reallocated. the importance of all of those stakeholders. I think it's, you know, incredible to have industry here in the room, and I think we've got a lot of influence to be had in our watersheds, but we really need to get the other stakeholders here as well, or we need to go to them. We need to sit together and involve everybody in these discussions. That regenerative piece, the importance of groundwater, keeps coming up. It is really critical. We need to recharge and regenerate as much as look at these new technologies and new water, and enable people to consider that from a cultural perspective, and we need to make it okay to use these. And then the democratization of data as well. I think putting the information in people's hands so that they can really understand, coming back to what I was first saying about how we think the biggest, the greatest actions that we've seen have been around people having better understanding of the water cycle. We're so detached from water, which is this incredible global commons, which we all have such a responsibility to look after. So the more we can get that information out, you know, about the data and the information and how we can all take responsibility and take action, I think is another really important point. So
thank you. So I'm suggesting a somewhat different idea to make it a little more lively. I'm actually going to ask the panelists to pose a couple of questions to the audience. Yeah, I'll come back to some more questions, but I thought it's a one-way traffic. And I think it would be interesting to hear from the panelists and sort of look at a few questions that we might want to ponder. And then I'll open it up for quick responses. I mean, don't make it a long stretch, but quick responses from the audience. I think that's perhaps a good idea to start thinking of how collaborations and partnerships and dialogue work. Would you like to begin, sir? You can use your mic.
Well, I'm from an industry. In fact, I have many questions than answers. In fact, I'm more controlled. I'm more controlled. I'm more, in fact, people expect many things from me. They want money. They want production. They want whatnot, everything. And they give you, as always, I follow the rule of McMurphy's law. If n components are required, n-1 is given to me. So the questions are, one, that it refers to regulations. I'll just put my question in a simple way. If you were a person working in the industry requires water. And you know that the community around the country requires the growth as well. So you need to balance between the demand and the availability. At the same time, meeting the business requirements. If you are in that position to manage the water, given there is a stress, you can imagine the current condition. There is a climate change which is on the corners, and there is a demand from the economy that I need to grow into the third largest economy. I need to increase my industrial growth, and the population is increased in the country. So I need to feed them through the agricultural as well as the domestic requirements I have to meet. And what will be the better approach? I don't say that, putting up more regulations does not solve the solution. Giving us more ideas does not give me the solution. So I want maybe one of you can take the query, given the current situation, how one would think like this. Because when I'm in industry, people keep on asking me the query, and we do some experiments. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail. But being outside the industry, maybe you will have good ideas to throw or maybe help me. So I repeat my question once again. Given the conditions, current conditions, which the population is increasing, industry requirement is increasing, resources depleting. So how do I balance this? Please. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take the 4 questions and then we'll come back. Lubaina.
So my question is more from as a resident of Mumbai. What are the kind of incentives and regulations that we think will help us be much more responsible in deploying the right technologies, the right sort of modernization that needs to happen in all our buildings. What is that sort of balance of regulation and incentives that will make us more proactive in using water more responsibly?
Regulation and incentive balance.
My question is little direct. See, I will tell you why. When I started my career around 35 years back in water industry, I was told that by 2025, India will be a water-stressed country and there will be a world war on water. Both things have not happened yet. Neither a world war or neither a water stressed. Okay. So with all these, what panelist has explained and whatever the, technological innovations has happened and so much efforts, government, NGOs, academicians, industries are taking. Do you really think that India will be a water stressed by 2030? If yes, why? And if no, why? Very simple question. Very direct.
So I think whatever I wanted to ask has already been covered by three panelists. So being last in the row is actually a very difficult that way. But still, I would manage to ask a question which always keeps on cropping up in my mind, because I was incidentally a boiler person for 17 years and then 2 years old in the water industry. So what is more important, or what should precede, or whether these two things should go hand in hand? We talk about carbon neutrality, and I never talk about water waste. Water is not a waste. Many times we talk about wastewater, right? Water is never a waste. So whether carbon neutrality and water positivity should go hand in hand, or is there some science or some school of thought which would say that we should first become carbon neutral and then the water positivity has to follow? Or can these two things go hand in hand, or whether water positivity has to precede and then rest all will follow? I mean, I think ma'am very rightly said, pehle hamari life important hai. So what is more important for us? We breathe air. So I would not say carbon neutrality is not important, because if you keep polluting air, that's why I think CPCP has become smart and they have now came out with the average pollution index. You pollute air more, do less water pollution and say I'm good, it's not. You have to equally less pollute air also, water also, land also. That's how the average index has been made. So, I mean, this is a question which comes to my mind. I think people can think about it, but I have not got an answer to it till now.
Anyway, so that's a fairly simple set of straightforward questions. Mr. Sharma, you raised your hand first.
Can I get the panels? So we have our panel speakers mentioning about 4 questions. The first question is how the industry meets its water demand, keeping priorities of domestic use and agriculture demands. Rao garu meer prashna vesaru. Actually, this should be a planned strategy, first thing. And if any industry is planning to set up any company or any premises anywhere, I think a preliminary assessment is needed. What is the water requirement over the course of time, maybe 10 years down the line or 15 years down the line? What is the strategy? And what is the requirement of water within that period of time, whether it is concerning to the industry or concerning to the community or concerning to agriculture use? इन चीजों को देखते हुए उधर कंपनी सेटअप करना है, लेकिन नहीं हो रहा हमारे देश में. ये पहली बात. दूसरी प्रश्न, incentives to promote urban water management. Sir, please. I
do, there should be a strategy. That is where my question is. In fact, industry does to the best of their wisdom, they do strategize before setting up an industry. But there should be an objective way of strategizing the things by the regulator. That is my submission. That's what I'm looking at from the audience also. Maybe you can give recommendation to the people who are working. There should be a strategy objectively arrived at and given to the industry. It's industries are not left to their own ways. Rather than they were given an advantage or rather given a guidelines. How do you strategize this project? Why I'm saying this, Jai Guru. So we have many solar power plants are coming up in Rajasthan, Gujarat, whatnot, across the country. In the name of green power, we are putting up where the power, solar power is highly available. At the same time, it is a water stress area. There is no strategy in the sense the business is also going to get a hit somewhere, sometime. Maybe not now, maybe 5 years down, maybe 10 years down. They may find a challenge to sustain the business. So the government of India should make it strategically. This is the thing we should consider before you do this. It's not only the whosoever supplies the power at a lower price. Because if I go, I supply a power at 2 rupees, 1 rupee 70 paisa, 1 rupee 75 paisa. This is the demand, this is the market. So people go for a lower price. By simple reason, today I may be managing the show, but down the line it may become difficult. That is my submission. I agree with you. The strategic thinking should happen. Strategic thinking should get into the system. Thank you.
Very quick, Sharma ji.
Quick reflection on the second point, incentives. Madam, if you see the operationalization of different ministries, there are already incentives in promotion. Like, for example, Ministry of Rural Development or Ministry of Panchayati Raj, they're already incentivizing the best performing panchayats. A similar strategy needs to be adopted in promoting the urban governance and urban water management. Maybe at certain level, a level of governance will come into the picture, because it is the governance should be able to recognize these incentivization process and who need to be incentivized. And the third question, what will the state of India if there is, sir, there is already 430 water stress districts in our country. So in these 430 districts, I think through the works of different NGOs, civil society organizations, or through Jal Jeevan Mission, other centrally sponsored schemes, I think much of the work is being done. I think we should be happy that Government of India has extended JJM until 2028. I think these kind of strategies will definitely lead to water security for India. The fourth point is carbon neutrality and water positivity. Sir, I think when you bring up the carbon neutrality point, I think there is water consumption will be more, if I'm not wrong, especially in the course of production of cotton. If you see, I think this is a much area of discussion that needs to be done, whether carbon neutrality really leads to water positivity or not. It is subject to further discussion. We are not researchers in that, probably an area of extreme discussion. Thank you.
Any quick reflections? Any point?
My submission will be there, small submission, because yes, I say, please.
We'll take those reflections, then you can come back.
For first two questions, my suggestion will be, see, we have water metering and measurement at industrial level, but not, I haven't come across residential individual water meters. So if that is being implemented, then, and like electricity consumption, the range. So above that range, we will pay extra or double the cost. So like that, if we implement that based on the water usage, then it may be serve the purpose of incentive and the strategy, whatever we are talking about. Because somebody is using more because it is getting cheaper. So rich will become rich and poor will become poorer.
Interesting. So you're saying that when we talk of entitlements and tariffs,
right,
it's important to also measure water usage.
Exactly.
And
unless and until we measure
and at a fairly decentralized scale. Interesting point. Any other reflections? Madam had a point, right?
That she'll be able to say that. She'll say that. Okay.
Yeah. Mike.
I would like to speak in Hindi. Mr. Rao का वाटर बैलेंस के लिए मैं बोलना चाहूँगी कि सबसे पहले तो हमको ये देखना है कि हमारे पास पानी कितना है, उसके बाद हम देखेंगे कि उसका एलोकेशन किस तरह से हो सकता है. बिकॉज मैं वाटर ऑडिट पे भी मैं कॉन्फ्रेंसेस वगैरह अटेंड कर चुकी हूँ जहाँ हार्डकोर साइंटिस्ट आके उन्होंने ग्राउंड वाटर ऑडिट दिया हुआ है. तो बहुत से लैंड को उन्होंने ट्रायल लैंड भी घोषित किया है. तो अभी जैसे हम लोगों ने ग्रेन वाटर रिचार्ज का प्रोजेक्ट किया, एक कितना रूफटॉप है उसका कोएफिशिएंट निकाल के वहाँ के रेंज से अभी नाउ वी कैन से दैट वो हम लोग 2 प्रोजेक्ट में हम लोग 4.5 मिलियन लीटर वाटर रिचार्ज कर रहे हैं. सो वी कैन असेस दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स कि अगर हम इतना रूफटॉप लेंगे सिटी का या एनी रूरल एरिया का, तो हम कितना वाटर वहाँ कलेक्ट कर सकते हैं, वी कैन काउंट इट, देन एलोकेशन कम्स. सो लाइक दैट एटलीस्ट रेन वाटर रिचार्ज को हम जज कर सकते हैं कि हमने कितना रेन वाटर रिचार्ज किया है, हमारे पास पानी कितना है, फिर आगे हम उसको किस तरह से एलोकेट करना चाहते हैं. और अगर उसमें कोई किसी तरह की कंटेमिनेशन है तो दैट कैन बी ट्रीटेड. We have different techniques to treat the water. First, we need to have the water. So, और surface water है जो highly contaminated है, उसमें हम इंडस्ट्रीज पे बात करते हैं, लेकिन हम ये चीज को इग्नोर कर देते हैं कि मेजर इंडस्ट्रियल एफ्लुएंस सारा कुछ नदियों में जा रहा है. अभी मैं अपना एक एक्सपीरियंस बताना चाहूंगी. हम कुछ साल पहले हम लोग गंगा में गए थे ना, ऋषिकेश. The moment we just thought, हम लोग स्टेपिंग करने जा रहे थे कि वहां से एक बेल्ट आया ब्लैक कलर का, किसी ने सुएज का पूरा वो छोड़ दिया था गंगा में. So these things should be taken care first. अगर ये सब चीजें हम करते हैं तो हमारे पास पानी की कोई कमी नहीं. रेन वाटर रिचार्ज हम जगह जगह, अगर रूफ टॉप को भी ले लें तो हम बहुत पानी जमा कर सकते हैं. Like I have designed one project on river, a small patch of river. बिकॉज हम छोटे एनजीओ है, हम पूरी रिवर नहीं ले सकते. अगर वो 2 किलोमीटर का पैच अगर हम करते हैं रिवर रिजुवनेशन, तो वहां हमने असेस किया है हमारे हाइड्रोजियोलॉजिस्ट ने कि वहां हम 77 करोड़ लीटर पानी हम रिचार्ज कर सकते हैं. सो देयर आर टेक्निक्स, वी नीड टू वर्क ऑन दैट. तो हमको बैठ के पहले वाटर को बढ़ाने की बात करनी है, रिसोर्स को हम कैसे बढ़ा सकते हैं. तो एलोकेशन तो अपने आप हो ही जाएगा ना, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन और उसको लेके रेगुलेटरी जो भी चीजें हैं वो तो अपने आप धीरे धीरे एस्टेब्लिश हो जाएंगी.
Thank you. Yeah. So I actually want to bring in, would you like to respond or? Yeah, I'll just come to you. I actually want to bring in one more dimension, and maybe because we are running out of time, we'll have a quick set of closing comments for you. But I want to bring in a new dimension which we didn't really figure in this entire discourse or discussion. And I think Kapil had a very interesting slide where he showed us 2 bars, in terms of availability, and the one bar was a shorter bar, the other one had 2 components, which was bringing in, apart from drinking water, apart from agriculture, apart from industry, he talked about water for ecosystem use. And we really haven't considered water for ecosystem uses when we went into these discussions. I don't believe it was there in the presentation Mr. Chahande made, but one of the roles that MWRRA has is also to ensure e-flows and flows downstream. So if one could also reflect maybe in your closing comments, particularly Lubaina and Mr. Rao, if you could bring that in, it would be wonderful. But I'm going to take 2 last comments from you, madam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ishani from Hinduja Renewables. So coming from industry background, I could completely resonate with Mr. Rao, talking about the solar water usage. So I would like to emphasize that for a solar panel, 1 megawatt power that is generated, it uses around 5 liters of water for 1 cleaning cycle, 2 to 5 liters of water for 1 cleaning cycle. Sorry? Per panel, yeah. Yes. And then, yes. So we are also coming up with robotic cleanings, which will help us get water neutral or use less water. But just wanted to understand if there is any kind of incentivization for the robotic solar plants. And can we start a discussion on that? Because when we are talking about water, reducing water usage or being water neutral, then I think this kind of a discussion should also take place from an industry perspective. And Sir was also talking about sewage, reusing sewage for module cleaning and everything. So for a solar plant, the sewage uses is also, domestic water use is also very low, and I highly doubt how that water can be used for entire module cleaning. We will have to use water unless and until we are completely robotic. The last question that Mr. Sanjay had, water neutrality and carbon neutrality, which is more important. So I think both are more important, but on a governance level, I think with COPs coming up and the Panch Amrit that has been taken up by our Prime Minister, I think carbon neutrality has been given much more importance than water neutrality in our country, and also with the international forum talking more about carbon neutrality. We are more emphasized on the carbon neutrality than water neutrality, whereas discussion should be on both the forum. And also the mechanism of carbon credits and what we are talking about water credits. Carbon credits, though we have a market, we have a compliance market, we have a voluntary market, but the mechanisms are still in play, like laid out very effectively. But I'm not very sure about the water credits and the mechanism of that. So if anyone would like to reflect on that, that would be a great. Thank you.
Sanjay, last, and then we give it to the panel.
Hi, my name is Sachin Murthy. I'm presenting Aga Khan Agency for Habitat. So my question is like, I'm sharing my experience while working on the shallow aquifer management program that is part of the Ministry of Urban Governance. So under that project, we are working in the Thane Municipal Corporation. So we have documented total 24 like shallow aquifer locations, and out of that, like 21 like out of 19 locations are like wells and they are polluted. शैलो एक्वीफर में अगर वो सोर्स पोल्यूटेड है तो सोच लो कि हमारे सिटी जो है दैट इज इन हायर लेवल, और उसके आजू बाजू पेरीफेरी में जो गांव है वहां पे वो वाटर बह के रिचार्ज कर रहा है, तो उसको हम कैसे एड्रेस कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज एक्वीफर इज अ पोल्यूटेड. और सेकेंड क्वेश्चन ये है कि बॉम्बे में 10,000 वेल है, लेकिन वो ट्रेडिशनल जो हमारे ड्रिंकिंग वाटर सिस्टम है उसके रिस्टोरेशन के लिए हमारे अभी तक क्या हमने कुछ ऐसे स्टेप्स लिए हैं या एडवोकेसी हुई है क्या? क्योंकि अभी जो गवर्नमेंट का और एक रिपोर्ट आया है रिगार्डिंग द वाटर बॉडीज, अराउंड 70 वाटर बॉडीज आर कम अंडर द प्राइवेट ओनरशिप, और उसके लिए हमारे पास कुछ एडवोकेसी नहीं है, बट दे आर लाइक फुलफिलिंग द ड्रिंकिंग वाटर नीड एंड लाइवलीहुड नीड ऑफ द marginalized community. So if you can focus on that, what we can do, it will be very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Sachin. Okay, very quick, sir.
I'll keep it short. Hi, my name is Naveen and I'm from Foundation for Ecological Security.
Naveen, I can't see you because of the light. Sorry about that.
Yeah, now?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah, so my name is Naveen. I'm from FES. So we have worked with Frank Water in Sri Perumbudur and we've tried to understand how the social dynamics are evolving in the area. So one challenge for us, again, being an organization working with the rural communities on rural commons, it's easier to facilitate institutions and governance mechanisms. But in an area where the urban is in transition, where there's a lot of floating population, right? You have out migration, in migration, facilitating or the connect to the resources is really hard. So how do we reimagine or design institutions for resource governance mechanisms in such areas is my question. Yeah, thank you.
So this is what we are going to do. I'm going to again go through one round, very quick reflections. You don't have to answer all the questions posed to you, but at the end, what are the 2 or 3 important aspects which you would sort of think of as steps or ways forward or ideas in taking something like beyond the boundary dialogues ahead and the work on the ground? And then I'm going to hand it over to Avinash for a quick reflection of his thoughts on some of the questions that were posed. And maybe I'll add my 2-bit with a 2-bit point. Sanjay, you want to start?
So I think we have had very knowledge-enriched session. There's been a lot of good insights which have came. So the key takeaways which I would like to say is, one, what ma'am has, I think, repeatedly highlighted is we should also focus on the primary resource. While we talked about the secondary and probably the tertiary treatment of the effluents, it's equally important to focus on the primary source of water. I mean, be it rain or the other this thing, and preserve it equally so that it can be, we have water and then it can be treated. So I think that's the starting point, which perhaps most of the times during the discussions of secondary and tertiary processes, we tend to miss. Second is the study by leveraging technology, the geographical or the ecological study to see, what kind of water bodies are available, how is the water distribution network in that area, and how technology can be leveraged to make that community or that particular area, be it a district, be it a village, be it a small town, I mean, where there are maybe 8-10 families, can we work towards making them water securitized so that they are not worried about the drought or whether the rain will come or not. If the farmers have got this peace of mind that they have got their own securitization source of water, not to worry about the rain gods or pray them to be, helpful to them. I mean, that will be an era when India would bloom further on the agrarian economy, because it's a cyclic thing. And third point, what I feel is, I mean, the industry and the compliance bodies, I mean, they have to maybe jointly work hand in hand. And this compliance part, what I specifically see is missing. So irrespective of how many efforts we are putting towards water conservation, purifying it, unless and until there is compliance, at somebody or anybody would keep on polluting it, be it the rivers, the industrial discharge into the rivers or things like that. And all those efforts at the ground zero would go into vain. So it's equally important to have strict compliance, which I personally feel is yet to reach the levels which it should be. If you talk about other countries, it's at a very high level. And I think we have not discussed much today about the urban solutions. There's a lot of urbanization going on. You have got malls, the societies. So there's a lot of sewage treatment plant, effluent treatment plants, which are have now become mandatory, and that would serve as a source for water securitization for those premises. I think this is what is my takeaway. Thank you.
Mine will be shorter than this because water is such a subject that we can go on talking for the days together. So my only suggestion is that when we talk about the water neutrality, the first point comes into mind is the water audits. That ma'am has rightly mentioned that water audit has to be conducted, either the industry level or a community-based level, or maybe in the on the commercial complexes. Because then only you will be able to supply water, right quantity of water and right quality of water to the industries, irrigation. Otherwise, whoever cries, he gets the best quantity and quality. It's like a child, and unless he cries, you will not give him, milk. So it is like that. Industry cries, they will get water. If domestic consumer, they cry, they will get the water. So I think that the water audit, I have seen that it has been neglected. In fact, I'm talking from the perspective of the industries. When we say that your equipments, if you want to be a water positive company, then you should go first for the water audits, whether your equipments are consuming more water. So one should look at the water audit is not a cost, but it is basically going to help you in future to become a water neutral. That is only my suggestion.
Thanks. I mean, this has been an incredible session. I've learned a lot from very, very diverse speakers and even the audience. I think just, reflecting on this whole water for ecosystem use, one of the things that we are really trying to work on right now is this idea of how do we create ways of collaborating better at a very local level, and think and building this idea of the urban commons in even the most diverse and disconnected communities like Mumbai, right? Most of the people are in Mumbai are either it's a touch point to some other place, or people who have migrated from villages, etc., working here, and eventually, are looking that they will, go back to the village at some point, etc. So the idea of what it means to really care for your commons in a place where you're not actually as connected is a very, very crucial kind of problem in the city. And how do we then build in these, very collaborative community models where there is a cooperation? And, you see this in, for example, some of the Adivasi communities in the Sanjay Gandhi National Park or the RA Forest, where there are, joint forest management schemes that tribal communities work with the government on collaboratively taking care of natural ecosystems. How can we sort of learn from some of that to bring in these models, to build these cooperative models around highly polluted ecosystems like the Mithi? And then, for where we work, we are constantly working across at the cross section of solutions. So a lot of where we see the problem of water starts at trash management. So how do we ensure that there is a effective, reliable solid waste management system that is going into, slum neighborhoods, so that the trash doesn't show up in the nalas and things like that? So really, even locating where the problem is originating may not even be in the place where you're kind of looking. So that's, some of the things that we have been doing on thinking about ecosystems in the city. And also sort of this idea that when you think about blue, don't only just think about blue, that maybe the solution lies in the green, right? And yeah.
I think maybe most of the questions have been asked, but answered. I'll take two things. One is that e-flow. Yes, the e-flow has been prescribed under the law as far as the hydroelectric projects are concerned. In fact, for prescribing the e-flow, the ecosystem flow, depending on the aquatic life in the river, depending on the various systems, it has been defined. It has been mandated. And it is a science on its own. It is being, I would say, it is a well-established practices in the government of India. But as far as the e-flow for the general public is concerned, maybe it's a science which is to be built, still the work in progress, I would say. And the other part, what in fact I was literally, in fact, well, I have a little pain to hear that there are 24 wells, shallow aquifers are there which are contaminated. In fact, each one of us is responsible for that. In fact, I feel pain to hear that. And maybe somebody has to work on it, and in fact, it's a collective responsibility. We need to rectify it. In fact, the groundwater contamination is like is a poisoning the entire, maybe I would say the entire region, or maybe larger period, and affecting a huge population. And in fact, the third, which has been told, the water consumption in a solar power plants. Yes, even there is a solar power plant, they do require water. The robotic cleaning or the other ways of technological interventions probably may not give you the right results. To tell you to give you a comfort, I would say that conventional thermal power plants require something like 2.5 or 3 meter cube per megawatt hour, whereas the PV panels require somewhere anywhere between 0.2 to 0.5 meter cube per megawatt hour. So even though it's a less quantity of water, but it's a significant quantity of water, because if they are lying in the stress area, that is where the e-flow comes into picture. It will affect the ecosystem. So rest of the questions anyway have been answered. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I think almost all the questions have been answered, other than your question, which was actually pertaining the carbon credit and the water. The carbon neutrality as well as water. See, in COP26 and thereafter 27, 29. So it was decided that $100 billion, which is to come, it has not been given to us by the developed countries to developing countries like India. So because of that, the carbon credit flow has not yet established in India. $300 billion, what has been agreed by the COP28. But actually, with the change of the regime there in the US, I doubt whether the flow will be there. But the water credit part is there. There is a word called green credit, where actually if you are saving 75 meter cube of water, then you will be entitled to one water credit. This is still not implemented. It has got various parameters. Afforestation is one which has been implemented. and the water would come next. So I think it is still in the formation. Rest of this, all other questions, I think got settled. If there is any, could be asked. We can say it's an open house. Any question to Dr. Nirmala, to me, to Shilpa?
Maybe I have a small query to ask you. Because no, I am not in agreement to say that the government of India has, or rather the world is looking at the carbon neutrality first than the water neutrality. Because government of India has already started way back. I should not say somewhere in 70s, 80s, they started the water regulation, the water consumption parameters, benchmarks, and the consumption criteria. Number of things have been prescribed. Given the condition, I would say the government of India is progressively working towards water. I would say it is the first step they started. Carbon has come, yes, in fact, we do disclose a lot of water consumption data in the CDP. So I am not in complete agreement with to say that carbon has come first and carbon का work ज़्यादा हो रहा है, water के ऊपर काम नहीं है. Sorry, no. Water is being worked out. Maybe depending on that, it is being worked out.
No, that is correct. So I don't want to say her so, but since 1974 we had got the Water Act, so we are working on water. And you see, water is a very specific localized issue confined to the watershed. And carbon is something which is in the ambience. If I am polluting here, definitely US will also get impacted. So maybe far off from me, we are all connected through space. So that big difference is to be understood. But government has done a lot. There is a Pollution Control Board, Water Act, thereafter ZLD, now every liter of water which you are consuming in your built premises, that will also to be put around 20% should be by 27, 28, should be treated and reused. So it is like this. Now we cannot let loose it directly to the sewage system. It's like
I have one intervention. I think that I'm here.
Yeah,
The challenge I think is that we're working on some of these fast moving challenges in silos. So we're working on climate in silos. So there is a lot of focus on, carbon neutrality, and that trajectory of work is going in one direction. A focus on, water crisis and therefore water neutrality. And then there is a whole community of people talking about biodiversity impacts, and that is, in one trajectory. And all of the solutions that are being designed in these trajectories do not necessarily talk to each other, and there is a lot of maladaptation that is happening because of that sort of cross-referencing not happening. So I think in a way, I mean, this is really where the problem is, right? That the solar panel example was a great one. That are we really thinking about what is then the balance, right? And is there a certain portion of that land that can be made available for solar panels, and then you really kind of ensure you densely plant the other part of the land to ensure there's enough water seepage, and there is a biodiversity that can thrive, because not all our open land can become solar farms, right? And what is that balance between what we can actually generate as a country? How much can we then even curb our consumption, right? We have to really look at, because a lot of these, I mean, these aren't really aspirations, because we have an aspiration to become a 10 trillion economy, etc. And how do we, get there? And Maharashtra, I'm saying that, how do we get there if these are also then this crisis, right? At what point do we kind of think about our consumption? And yeah, so I think the problem is really in the cross-referencing that is not happening.
Definitely. So far, it's all our linear approach, but we should go in a clustered approach. You will find linear approach. You are architect by profession. You will find the linear approach is there even in the building construction, even in laying the power line, thereafter laying sewer line, thereafter laying power, water line. But they can't put all the lines in one tunnel, and then no more digging should happen. So that is correct. The linear approach and linear mindset, whatever is there, has to get converted into cluster. That definitely a change in transformation will take place. So thank you. I must, or you can conclude. I must conclude the session. It has remained very vibrant session, and thanks for attending this one. I will thank Frank Water and for the nice collaboration with CII, Water Institute. I'll hand over to.
So I think we had a very interesting discussion, and I have just picked up 3 points, which I thought I should conclude with. The last one is in the lighter spirit, but I'll begin with a more serious one. So I think a large part of discussions around industry, around the urban sector, and in terms of urban water is about treatment of water and bringing treated water into different uses. But why do we need to treat water in the first place? One, we use it. There's something else. What Sachin was saying, that if you have 19 out of 21 wells that are severely contaminated and they continue to be used as domestic and drinking water wells, we need to treat that water. But there's another side to the story. We are only looking at wells. If a well is contaminated, it has 2 possibilities. Only the well is contaminated, or the aquifer that supplies water to the well is also contaminated. And aquifer remediation is a much, much bigger challenge than treating contaminated water. Now, how are we going to bring that in? Because aquifers are both sources and sinks. So the groundwater dilemma remains. And the groundwater dilemma is also linked to e-flows, because there is a part of the river flow, which we call base flows, which we seldom consider. And I think these are questions for the future. The second one is, I live in Pune. And you know why Pune has been in the news recently, right? GBS. Okay. Now, what happens after something like a GBS is a well gets isolated. And they say that the well is contaminated. It's all been coming from there. But my own suspicion about not just GBS, but about pathogenic contamination is something that we can easily solve in India with 3 interventions. One is, I think this came up, I'm using this because this came up in today's session, and I think this is an important takeaway for us. The use of sewage and wastewater and dealing with it. I think we talked about it in the light of how can it be brought into reuse. Well, we didn't talk about it in terms of the leaks. There are 3 system leaks in the entire process in urban India. One is the mains, leaking sewage lines, and leaking stormwater drains. And when they leak, they are not mutually exclusive of each other. So can we not ensure mutual exclusivity to 100% exclusivity between mains, sewage, and stormwater? If you want a detailed discussion, we can have it outside over lunch. And my last point on the lighter side, we are sitting at a point in Mumbai called the Land's End. The Land's End. But where does the land in Mumbai begin? And if you want an answer to that question, we'll meet for this discussion over lunch. I'll hand it over to. Yeah. I'm not very good at formal, maybe because you started. So we have to ensure circularity to the whole process.
I think it's been a great afternoon. I think we've had various. I think it's a multidisciplinary, and we could see collective action actually happening, amongst all of us already. So I think we've already started. So the more the merrier. I mean, this is the dialogue series. This is the second. As Katie was mentioning in the morning, we'll have several more. And we invite you, so it will be a sequence. So we'll keep adding more inputs as we move along and, have the thread moving ahead. Any discussion points that you would like us to take up in the next dialogue series, please write to us. We are happy to take those points as well. And if there's something specific where you would like us, CI also has a series of events. Throughout the year, we have a complete event calendar. We can curate a session around that as well. So happy to partner with all of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. Yes, lunch is served outside, so please join us for lunch.
Yes,
We have one representation, please. Come, sir. Come.
Shilpa, please. Gender balance.
Sanjay garu.
Sir, how are you, sir? Fine. I'm in Water-Climate-Livelihood. अच्छा अच्छा हाँ 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 किया वो ऑलरेडी हाँ हाँ पता है ठीक है सर यस प्लीज